primary goal of crypto in general is to starve public services? Like, who thinks that? Who believes that? Who wants that to be the case? Hello and welcome to the video. I am your host, Leisurellama, and today I'm going to be doing a video response / react video to The Line Goes Up, as you guys can probably tell by the title of the video. The Line Goes Up, the problem with NFTs, is a relatively well-researched video that talks about the issues that the author, Holding Ideas, has with cryptocurrencies and NFTs. The primary problem that I have with this video is that a decent amount of the information is either misleading or wrong, even though there's obvious signs of research that went into the video. I think that the author had a conclusion that they were trying to come to, and so researched and provided information and evidence in order to support that conclusion. So there's nothing inherently wrong with doing things like that, just so long as you're not omitting information or providing misleading information in order to convince people to come to a specific conclusion. Depending on like what you're trying to do. I mean, it's what I did for a lot of college research papers and stuff, but I don't think that it's the proper way to go about doing things, because you're basically letting your bias determine the sources that you use and determine the information that you're going to present in order to try and convince people of a specific outcome. And so I think that this leads to a lot of wrong or misleading information, either from a lack of research or from ignoring sources or information in order to make sure that the specific conclusion that the author is trying to come to is come to. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going blow by blow through the video in order to refute or present alternatives for information that I think is wrong or misleading. I have seen a couple of responses to The Line Goes Up. There wasn't a whole lot of effort, I don't think, that was put into them. Not a whole lot of sources provided. They were sort of falling into the same trap that I see the author, Holding Ideas, falling into. I'm going to present all the information basically that I know, and I'm going to provide sources, and I think that a lot of these sources are pretty legitimate. And so after I present the information and evidence, you, the viewer, will be able to come up with your own conclusion. Let's just get into it. I have a lot of tabs open, so these are going to be all of my sources, and all of the sources are going to be available in the video description. But I'm going to be directly referencing the PayPal website, Lightspeed. I'm going to be directly referencing Forbes, Coinbase.com, Investopedia, whereas his sources, Web3 is going great, Tante.cc. This looks like a blog. This looks like a blog. This looks like a blog. Mother Jones. Twitter. Let's see. Twitter can actually be a legitimate source sometimes. So let's see. Yeah, so his sources are very lackluster. It's just a little bit disappointing, honestly. All of these are basically blogs. Just a little bit disappointing. So we're going to go into this. Also, I have the video going at 1.5 times speed just so that we can get through it faster. I listened to it a couple of times on 1.5 times speed, so I know that I can keep up with what's going on. The closed captions are open as well, so we'll be going through it with the closed captions on. So hopefully that helps. So here we go. He mentions right here that it was paraded as an end to banks and centralized currency. It's possible that a good number of people think that Bitcoin is going to be an end to banks and an end to centralized currency, but if you look at the Bitcoin white paper, which is what the creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, if you look at what they originally published in order to sort of describe what Bitcoin is, you can look right here in the abstract. The first sentence is a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. It's not saying the end of financial institutions by allowing people to do peer-to-peer payments. It's not saying financial institutions are now obsolete. It's not saying any of that. It's allowing people the option to send payments online without having to go through a financial institution. Instead of having financial institutions as like a point of failure, this would allow for people to keep their identities separate from their transactions and from the public. It creates a pseudonymous system where currently, in order to use like a credit card or something like that, your identity is tied to the card, which then goes through with the transactions into a trusted third party. So you're going through a business over to a trusted third party, and then that trusted third party, a Visa or whatever, is processing the transaction from your bank over to the business in which you were doing the transaction, and all of this information is kept from the public. And I think that it's actually a good thing that all of that information is kept from the public, because a lot of personally identifiable information is used in this process. One of the big flaws with this system, and part of the reason why you have to have so much fraud protection when you are conducting transactions in this way, is there are data breaches and there are things that leak your personal information. So in 2015, Target, which is a fairly large retailer, had a bunch of information leaked, and it leaked people's credit card info. So when your credit card info gets leaked and people are able to gain access to that information, they can then use that info to make online transactions. So they use this information in order to create fraud, right? But if you look at the Bitcoin system, the information that gets put out in the public is not information that's needed in order to be able to make a transaction on your behalf, because you have private keys, and you have to have those private keys in order to be able to make a transaction. So if Target were to have all of their data breached, and we were using some form of cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin, then all of that information is public anyways, and Target doesn't have access to any personal information, doesn't have any access to payment information or anything else. So it would just be worthless. Like the information is public anyways, and that sort of prevents this, which is part of the reason why we have so much fraud protection with our credit cards. Not the only reason, for sure, but part of the reason. And so in a lot of ways, I think that it's just a really good alternative that people should be able to use.
As we get into this, we're going to have to deal with a lot of vocabulary, need to deal with a lot of complexity. Some of this is a result of systems that are very technically intricate, and some of this is from systems that are poorly designed or deliberately obtuse in order to make them difficult to understand and thus appear more legitimate. The entire subject sits at the intersection of two fields that are notoriously prone to hype-based obfuscation, computer tech and finance, and inherits a lot of bad habits from both.
I don't think that cryptocurrency is inherently difficult to understand. If you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, then it can be a little bit difficult. But for the average person that needs to use or would want to use cryptocurrency, it's not actually that complicated. He's going to bring up a very obscure example of something that is pretty complicated. But up until this video was released, I had no idea what dog was, and he's going to talk about what dog is. So nobody needs to know what it is, and nobody needs to deal with it, because it's such an obscure example. But cryptocurrency is basically the combination of technology and finance sort of going together. And so you are going to have a certain level of complexity there that is just inherent to having a complex subject married to another complex subject. So that is something to keep in mind, is that getting down to the nitty-gritty of it is going to be difficult. But as more systems come into place and as the space matures, it will be a lot easier for people to be able to use it. And the complexity will be handled on the backside by projects and by other things that allow for more versatility.
Mining and minting are both methods of making tokens, which are the base thing that blockchains deal with, but the two are colloquially different processes, where mining is a coin token created as a result of the consensus protocol, and minting is user-initiated addition of a token to a blockchain.
I mean, he says this in the most complicated way possible. I think mining is just generating coins using some form of work, and minting is just creating coins. Right? Like that would be the way that I would describe it simply. What he says here is technically correct. I think that people can understand, like the average person can understand the difference between mining and minting. It would be just like if I tried to describe the difference between going and getting gold from a mine shaft and printing coins, like creating coins. Not even in cryptocurrency, in real life. Like when you're creating coins, all you're doing is you're taking the metal and you're pressing it so that the coin looks like the coin that you want it to be, and mining is going down into the mine and digging out the raw materials, right? There's a difference between the two, and I think most people can conceptualize the difference. Like creating money and mining ore are two different processes, right? And there's probably a way more complicated way to describe that, but I think that the average person can understand that explanation. So it's not obtuse for the sake of being obtuse. It's two actually different processes that can be distinguished between.
Coin token created as a result of the consensus protocol, and minting is user-initiated addition of a token to a blockchain. All blockchains are made of nodes, and these nodes can be watcher nodes, minor nodes, or validator nodes, though most minor nodes are also validator nodes. Fractionalization is the process of taking one asset and creating a new asset that represents portions of the original. So you get DOG, a meme coin crypto DeFi venture capital fund backed by the fractionalization of the original Doge meme sold as an NFT to Pleaser DAO on the Ethereum network. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this is like this is basically as complicated of a thing as I've seen in cryptocurrency, but you don't even need to know what DOG is. DOG is completely irrelevant at this point in time. You don't even have to know what Doge is, because it's not that it's not relevant at all. Doge is currently the number 12 cryptocurrency, but like it's just peer-to-peer digital cash, basically. Like that's what it is. It was designed for tipping people on the internet, like just giving people a little bit of a tip, the same way that you tip your waitress or something. That's basically it. So you don't need to know what this is. Like for the average person, this is extra. You don't need this.
To Pleaser DAO on the Ethereum network. I'm sorry, some of this is just gonna be like that. The idea behind cryptocurrency is that your digital wallet functions the same as a bank account. There's no need for a bank to hold and process your transactions, because rather than holding a sum that conceptually represents physical currency, the crypto coins in your crypto wallet are the actual money. And because this money isn't issued by a government, it is resistant to historical cash crises like hyperinflation caused by governments devaluing their currency on purpose or by accident. It brings the flexibility and anonymity of cash and barter to the digital realm, allowing individuals to transact without oversight or intermediaries.
This is basically true. Like if you put your money in a bank account, your bank is going to use your money in order to try and make money by providing loans, providing financial services, etc. We do have FDIC insurance in the United States, so your money is typically covered. So if the bank does go out, then you're not completely screwed. But cryptocurrency does resolve that problem. Like you can get the functionality and flexibility of having a bank account without having to depend on creating a bank account. Like I can transact with people who are hundreds of miles away, or I can transact with people who are right next to me using my phone. It becomes that simple, and all of the cryptocurrency is in my wallet, secured by my private keys. So all of the cryptocurrency is there, right? You don't have a fractional reserve banking system within cryptocurrency. If you have your own wallet and you put your money in your wallet, it's essentially the same as taking all of your money and putting it underneath your mattress, except that it's easier to use than hard cash because you don't have to deal with change. You don't have to deal with having to carry around like large sums of money that can be taken from you. In a lot of ways, I think it's better money than money. So yeah, I think that this one paragraph pitch is basically correct. So let's just keep on going.
And in a one-paragraph pitch, you can see the appeal. There's a compelling narrative there. But of course, in the 12 years since then, none of that played out as designed. Bitcoin was structurally too slow and expensive to handle regular commerce.
Okay, so at the creation of Bitcoin, sure, Bitcoin would not have been able to scale in 2008 to cover all of the financial transactions of the world. Wouldn't be possible for that to happen. But since 2008, the protocol has been improving, and the systems that are in place in order to allow for transactions to take place have also been improving. So this video was released January 21st, 2022. Well, something that was released in 2017, so quite a while ago, was the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So what is the Bitcoin Lightning Network? The Bitcoin Lightning Network is a layer 2 solution that allows for people to process transactions without having to deal with the fees of the blockchain. So you can actually see right here, Coinbase has a pretty good article on this. What is the Lightning Network? Beginner's Guide to the layer 2 technology that making Bitcoin payments faster and cheaper. With the Lightning Network, you can basically transact instantaneously for fractions of a penny in fees. Let's actually look at those fees. Okay, so I actually have a website here. Again, link is going to be inside the description, but it shows real-time Lightning Network statistics. So let's refresh this page. There we go. And down here, it will show you a median base fee and a median fee rate. And we can see here that the median base fee is 1 sat. So 1 sat, or 1 Satoshi, which is named after the creator of Bitcoin, is 8 decimal places down from 1 Bitcoin. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1 Satoshi is 0.000465 cents. There's a penny, there's a tenth of a penny, there's a hundredth of a penny. So 1 Satoshi is 4 hundredths of a penny. All right, so let's actually look at what a real world transaction on the Lightning Network would be in fees. All right, so let's say I want to send my friend, or I want to buy a product. And we'll just say that this product is $50. I'm doing a $50 transaction. All right. So my fee in this $50 transaction would be 1 Satoshi. So I've already got the 1 Satoshi right in there. And then it would be for every single Satoshi, 0.00032 sats. That's a very, very small amount of dollars. We don't have anything even close to that denomination. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 decimal places back, 4, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. We have that 8, so 8 times 32. And again, all of this stuff would be calculated 256 automatically by your wallet when you are conducting the transaction. So if I do a $50 transaction, and let's zero this out, it's going to cost me 0.0019, so about 2/10 of a penny. So that's how much it would cost me to do a Lightning Network transaction to purchase $50 worth of goods, or to send my friend $50. Too expensive. Also, this would be done instantaneously. So relatively, like it would take a second maybe in order for this transaction to clear, to process, right? So we have a nearly instantaneous transaction that costs 2/10 of a penny. All right, so now let's compare this against how much it would cost to do a credit card transaction, right? Since credit cards are basically the way that people buy goods. Here is a company that makes software for Credit card transactions. Let's look at their information. How long does it take for a payment to process? Generally, it takes 2 business days. Now, remember, on the Lightning Network, nearly instantaneous. It takes 2 business days for the payment to process. If you process the payment on Friday, you'll receive the funds on Thursday. That's a decent bit longer. That's a little bit slower, and fees are automatically deducted from payments before they're deposited into your account. Now let's look at fees. What are the fees in order to do a credit card transaction? Well, one of the options is flat rate. So flat rate is about 2.9% of the total cost of the transaction plus 30 cents. We're going to keep everything the same. So $50 transaction, my transaction I calculated out on the Lightning Network, about $50. So we're going to keep this 50 bucks, $1.45, and then we're going to add 30 cents. So $1.75 in transaction fees for the flat rate fee structure in order to receive your funds in 2 to 4 days. So which one is the slow and archaic one? Which one is the one that takes longer to process? All right. Let's say that you don't even want to use the Lightning Network though. So your average transaction fee is 80 cents. Right there, I just compared Bitcoin Lightning Network and Bitcoin on-chain transactions to credit cards. Let's look at some other credit card processors. Right here, we have Cash App. Using credit card on Cash App, Square adds a 3% fee to the transaction. Let's look at PayPal. PayPal consumer fees. Okay, so if you send it on a card, it's 2.90% plus a fixed fee. Fixed fee in US dollars is 30 cents. So 30 cents plus 2.9%. So basically same thing as a credit card, or as this other credit card payment processor. If you want an instant withdrawal, it's 1.5% of the amount transferred. Local account is no fee, but that's going to be going through the ACH system, which can take 3 to 5 days to process. So if we're looking at current systems, they are expensive and they are slow and they are a little bit difficult to use. Whereas with cryptocurrency, you can do all of this with just a cell phone. It makes it easier for commerce to happen and cheaper. Like it's cheaper to use this and faster than the credit card system that we currently have in place. He says that it's too slow, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. He either doesn't know about these improvements to Bitcoin, or he's purposely not talking about them in order to make his point seem more correct, in order to convince people that he is correct, when I think that he either didn't look well enough into this or is purposely just not telling people about this stuff. Either way, it's not good. It's not a good look.
The whole thing basically came out the gate as a speculative financial vehicle, and so the only consumer market that proved to be a viable use was buying and selling prohibited drugs, where the high fees, rapid price fluctuations, and multi-hour transaction times were mitigated by receiving LSD in the mail a week later. And as far as banking is concerned,
yeah, so it is the case that people did use cryptocurrencies in order to purchase drugs. They probably still do. They almost certainly still do. But people use cash to purchase drugs all the time. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. People use their money for basically what they want to. So if you want to buy drugs, you totally can. Like there's nothing stopping you from going and purchasing. I mean, depending on what drugs you're trying to buy, if they're illegal, then you're probably going to run into law enforcement issues. But like nobody is stopped from taking cash down to their local drug dealer and exchanging cash for drugs. There's no inherent system in place to prevent this. The same thing with cryptocurrency. All this shows is that it's legitimate money. Because would you trade something that is completely useless for drugs, which are arguably pretty valuable, right? You wouldn't do that. The idea that you're not going to try and get what you can for drugs is preposterous. It just shows that it has value. It's an actual thing that people are exchanging goods for. right? Just so happens that it's a little bit more on the shady side of the business world, but it just shows that it has some sort of legitimacy.
Bitcoin was never designed to solve the actual problems created by the banking industry.
Correct. Bitcoin was never designed to solve the actual problems of the banking industry. This is 100% correct. Bitcoin, in some ways, does solve some of the problems of the banking industry, but like I showed earlier, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. So nowhere in here does it say that financial institutions are to go down and this will resolve all of the problems of financial institutions. No, there are some people that have probably claimed that this is the case, but that's not what it's designed to do, right? And so this is actually a true statement.
Only to be the new medium by which they operated. The principal offering wasn't revolution, but at best a changing of the guard. The gripe is not with the outcomes of 2008, but the fact that you had to be well connected in order to get in on the grift in 2006.
Okay, and then also the thing that's being implied here is that Bitcoin was created because of the 2008 financial crisis. And I don't believe that this is the case. I am relatively certain that Bitcoin was started before 2008. The idea for Bitcoin has been around since well before then, but the idea that the 2008 financial crisis happened and then suddenly like a revolutionary online digital currency that resolves the double spend problem came into existence in 2009 and was available to the public, it is a little bit silly to me. The development cycle had to have been longer than 1 year. The creation process for it, like the amount of thinking that would have to go into creating this project, would have had to have started well before 2008. So this is applying motive to something that I don't believe that motive should be applied to. It wasn't a grifter trying to like get in on the grift early for the 2008 financial crisis. Like it's just like this is the kind of stuff that's misleading and I think just wrong. Just wrong. So we'll keep on going though.
And even the change of the guard is an illusion. Old money finance assholes like the Winklevoss.
Okay, so I don't know a ton about the Winklevoss twins, other than they own or created the exchange Gemini, which is a cryptocurrency exchange where you can sort of like deposit your funds in and then make trades on their platform, and then they take a little bit of fees on top of that. Last time I used their platform, the fee was 0.5%. So they would take 0.5% of the transactions done on their exchange. But in order to create something like a exchange, you have to have money in order to do it. Like it doesn't just like come out of thin air, and you're not going to have like a single developer in their free time creating a robust cryptocurrency exchange. You're going to have money in order to do that. Like, so old money is going to have the option to be involved here. So like, I get what he's saying, like that old money people were able to get involved in cryptocurrency, but I don't think that people en masse were really putting a lot of money into cryptocurrency. I don't think old money en masse was putting money into cryptocurrency either. So you don't have like these huge big money people taking all of their money and throwing it into cryptocurrency. Don't see that happening, and I haven't seen anything that would indicate that. But there are some old money people that are getting involved in cryptocurrency, and in part that's because you have to have money in order to make a product, make a robust product. So Gemini, as far as I understand, is a pretty decent exchange, but there are other options.
First big names to jump onto crypto, where they remain to this day. Financial criminal Jordan Belfort, convicted of fraud for running pump and dump schemes and barred for life from trading regulated securities or acting as a broker, loves crypto. Venture capitalist Chris Dixon, who is...
Okay, yeah, so I don't necessarily know who this is. I have heard of The Wolf of Wall Street, but I haven't watched The Wolf of Wall Street.
Pump and dump scheme.
but I think it's kind of irrelevant whether or not he likes cryptocurrency.
Venture capitalist Chris Dixon, who has made huge bank off the old web in his role as a general partner at VC firm Andreessen Horowitz, is super popular in the NFT space. He likes to paint himself as an outsider underdog fighting the gatekeepers, but he also sits on the boards of Coinbase, a large cryptocurrency exchange that makes money by being the gatekeeper, collecting a fee on all entries and exits to the crypto economy.
Okay, so I don't know who this dude is either, but I do have a gripe with his saying that Coinbase controls all entries and exits to the crypto economy. This is not the case. You have a good number of exchanges like Kraken, like Gemini, like Binance.us, or at least Binance.us for US people. Binance, I believe, is based out of Asia, and you have a number of options to go through for cryptocurrency exchanges. Also, if you have funds already in cryptocurrency, or even if you don't have to go through a centralized exchange. So those are all examples of centralized exchanges, but which I'm going to get into this later when he starts talking about smart contracts. But you have Uniswap, for example, which is a decentralized exchange, and all of their code is open source. You can look at it on GitHub, right? This is their code. This is Uniswap. And it makes it really simple if your wallet is connected to be able to swap Ethereum for other tokens. You can only at this point swap Ethereum-based tokens with other Ethereum-based tokens. So Aave or AAG or there's Aave. A bunch of different options here. And you don't go through a centralized exchange. You have people that are pooling their funds. Here we go. So that's the total value locked. That's the volume. There's a bunch of pools where people have put their funds into this, and then they receive a portion of the trades that happen on the Uniswap platform. So this is between USDC and Ethereum. And basically, when people make a swap, it takes from this part and adds to this part. So it takes from, like, let's say I want to sell my Ethereum for USDC. I would put Ethereum into the pool. I would take USDC out at an equal value. And then the act of doing so changes what the equal value is. And there's people that put their funds in order to earn the fees off of the trade. And the pool changes in what amounts are in each pool when the trades happen. So there's people that are hoping to make a little bit of money off of that. You also have BISC, which is a decentralized exchange that allows for you to have a USD on-ramp without having to go through a centralized exchange. So it's completely decentralized, and it uses a system of having arbitrators in order to go over transactions and or to monitor transactions and make sure that the transactions take place in the way that they are supposed to. So you don't have to go through Coinbase. There are a bunch of other options. Coinbase does make a lot of money, and they make a lot of money off of trades that are happening on their exchange platform or off of their main platform like Coinbase and Coinbase Pro, which if you are going to trade cryptocurrencies, I think that the better option typically is to go through whatever the Pro platform is, because you're probably going to have to deal with less fees, but that would be up to you. So I don't know who this dude is. He seems relatively irrelevant to me, but it seems like he's an old money person.
Peter Thiel, who also went from wealthy to ultra wealthy off the Web2 boom via PayPal, loves crypto and is friends with a bunch of eugenics advocates who promote cryptocurrency as a return to sound money for a whole bunch of extremely racist reasons, because when they start talking about banks and bankers, they mean Jews. Some of the largest...
Yeah, so I don't know who Peter Thiel is, but it doesn't... I don't think that he matters very much in the cryptocurrency space. So yeah, and one of the things about having a free and open platform that anybody can use is that anybody can use it. So even people that you might not necessarily like, or people that you might not necessarily agree with, can use the platform, right? And that's sort of the point, is that you have an peer-to-peer system that doesn't depend on any sort of financial institution, so anybody can use it.
institutional holders of cryptocurrency are the exact same investment banks that created the subprime loan crash.
Okay, so I would like to see a source for this. Who?
Holders of cryptocurrency.
Some of the largest institutional holders of cryptocurrency are the exact same investment banks that created the subprime loan crash. Like, that is a statement that should be able to be factually checked. But, like, where's the source for this? Who determined this? Right? This is what I would like to know, because I don't think that the people that were involved in the subprime loan crash are the same people that are super involved in cryptocurrency at this point. There's not a ton of large institutions that are involved in cryptocurrency at this point. So I want to know why he thinks this. I don't think this is the case based off of the information that I've seen.
Banks that created the subprime loan crash. Rather than being a reprieve to the people harmed by the housing bubble, the people whose savings and retirements were unknown to them, being gambled on smoke, cryptocurrency instantly became the new playground for smoke vendors.
Okay, so he says this, but if you have your money inside a cryptocurrency wallet, nobody can do anything with your money. So it can't be that unknowing to you, people were using your money for gambling. Like, if you keep your money in your own cryptocurrency wallet, that can't happen. So I don't see what he's trying to get at here at all.
This is a really important point to stress. Cryptocurrency does nothing to address 99% of the problems with the banking industry, because those problems are patterns of human behavior, their incentives, their social structures, their modalities. The problem is what people are doing to others, not that the building they're doing it in has the word bank.
So I actually fundamentally agree with this statement that he's making, right? Cryptocurrency doesn't resolve the problems of the bank. The banking system exists, and if theoretically we were to swap completely from US dollars to Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dogecoin or USDC, it wouldn't resolve these problems. These problems would still exist because they're patterns of human behavior. They are things that are part of human nature. People are just going to be greedy. People are going to want to get as much as they can, right? And so the point of this system isn't necessarily because we're trying to resolve all of the problems of the banking industry, right? It's here to allow an option for people to exchange goods peer-to-peer without needing a third party, because that third party is the blockchain, right? So it provides people an option. It doesn't mean that they can't, or they don't have the option of using a financial institution. They totally can. So this is a valid point right here.
Bank on the outside. In addition to not fixing problems, Bitcoin also came with a pretty substantial drawback. The innovation of Bitcoin over previous attempts at digital currency was to employ a distributed append-only ledger, a kind of database where new entries can only be added to the end, and then to have several different nodes called validators compete over who gets to validate the next update. These are, respectively, the blockchain and proof-of-work verification. Now, proof-of-work has an interesting history as a technology, typically being deployed as a deterrent to misbehavior. For example, if you require that every email sent, the user's computer has to compute a small math program. It places a trivial load onto normal users sending a few dozen or even a couple hundred emails a day, but places a massive load on the infrastructure of anyone attempting to spam millions of emails. How it works in Bitcoin, simply put, is that when a block of transactions are ready to be recorded to the ledger, all of the mining nodes in the network compete with one another to solve a cryptographic math problem that's based on the data inside the block. Effectively, they're competing to figure out the equation that yields a specific result when the contents of the block are fed into it, with the complexity of the desired result getting deliberately more difficult based on the total processing power available to the network. Once the math problem has been solved, the rest of the validation network can easily double-check the work, since the contents of the block can be fed into the proposed solution, and it either spits out the valid answer or fails. If the equation works and the consensus of validator signs off on it, the block is added to the bottom of the ledger, and the miner who solved the problem first is rewarded with newly generated Bitcoin. The complexity of the answer that the computers are trying to solve scales up based on the network's processing power, specifically to incur heavy diminishing returns as a protection against an attack on the network where someone just builds a bigger computer and takes over. Critics pointed out that this created new problems.
Okay, so this is actually a really good description of the way that proof of mining works. And this is part of the reason why I think that this is a pretty well researched and pretty well put together video, which also is a little bit concerning with the amount of misleading information or information that appears to have not been included, such as the Bitcoin Lightning Network. For like earlier when he was talking about scalability, like this is that was a really good brief explanation of what mining is. So let's just continue with the video.
Adversarial validation would deliberately incur escalating processing costs, which would in turn generate perverse structural incentives that would quickly reward capital holders and lock out any individual that wasn't already obscenely wealthy, because while the escalating proof of work scheme incurs heavy diminishing returns are still returns. So more would always go to those with the resources to build the bigger rig, no matter what Bitcoin future was envisioned.
Okay, so this is theoretically correct, but not realistically correct. And here's why. Anybody that has attempted to run a business understands that as you scale up, as you get more of something, whether that's more retail stores, more offices, more data centers, you're going to be incurring more cost. So if somebody wanted to set up a large scale mining operation, they would have to rent out space, because unless you have like an unlimited amount of space inside your house, like you can't just continue to add rigs to your house. You also have to incur cooling costs because computers, when they're doing work, generate heat, and that heat, once it reaches a certain level, starts to reduce the functionality of the computer component, or melts the computer component. So you need to make sure that the temperature doesn't get too high. So for example, with my graphics cards, I had to make sure that they stayed below 82 degrees Celsius, which is pretty warm. But with doing all of the computations that the graphics cards were doing, I had to make sure that cooling systems were in place in order to remove the heat from the graphics cards. And then also you have electricity costs. So while you're running your mining rig inside your house, like if you're running one mining rig, then depending on whether or not it's an ASIC or GPUs, we don't have to go into detail on the specifics of that because it applies basically across the board. You are going to be utilizing your electrical system that already exists inside your house in order to mine cryptocurrency. But as you build a larger operation, electrical costs become more expensive because you have to set up systems that are able to handle the huge electrical demand of a massive mining farm. And also you have to pay the cost of the electricity that you're using in order to mine the cryptocurrency, right? And so what all of this basically is pointing out is that as you scale up your operation, you will have to incur extra costs. And this is if you have the money to be able to buy all of the mining rigs that you need to create a large scale operation. If you don't have that money, you either have to go to investors who are going to be taking a percentage of the business, or you have to go get loans, and the loans are going to have an interest rate and you're going to have to make payments on those loans. Whereas a small time miner is potentially not going to have to deal with that. They'll be able to probably purchase a couple of graphics cards, a little bit more difficult recently than it was before, but purchase a couple of graphics cards or maybe an ASIC miner, and then run that in their home for relatively minimal costs, because you already have electricity going to your house, and you already might have some of the components that you need in order to put it together. So you just need to buy an extra GPU that goes into your computer, and then that GPU will be mining while you're at work or something like that, or while you were not using your computer. And then when you want to play some games, you just go on your computer, turn off the mining program, play games, and then leave and turn on the mining program while you go, that kind of stuff. As a small time miner, you can do that. There are also Bitcoin mining pools. So if you're mining Bitcoin and you don't have enough, or don't want to sort of take the risk of getting the winner takes all option, then what you can do is you can use a mining pool like bitcoin.com or ant pool or slush pool, in which you provide some of your hash power over to the pool, and then the whole entire pool, a bunch of different miners varying in size, contribute to the overall work of the pool. And then when it gets a block, it distributes the reward based off of the amount of work you provided. So this will provide more consistent returns on your mining work, and they'll take a fee. So the largest pool is bitcoin.com, and they take a fee of 1.5%. So they take a small fee, but they provide you with more consistent return because the whole entire pool is able to get rewards faster than an individual miner. This means that small time miners can get a more consistent return on their investment, or you can use something like NiceHash, which pays you for the hash power a little bit more indirectly. Basically, you have people that are paying for hash power, and then you have people that are selling hash power, and NiceHash kind of acts as the middleman between people who are buying hash power and people who are selling hash power in order to pay you out in Bitcoin. So there are a couple of different options here, and you're going to get paid a smaller, relatively more consistent amount, even if you're not the largest mining operation ever. Also, as the price of cryptocurrencies fluctuate, which they tend to do, if you're looking at the price of Bitcoin, and let's go with just 1 year, right? At one point, Bitcoin was $63,000 per Bitcoin. And at another point, Bitcoin was 35, or down here, $29,000 per Bitcoin. Your earnings are going to be relatively consistent, but probably go down slightly over time for your mining operation. So at one point, you can sell some of your cryptocurrency, some of your Bitcoin, for $63,000 per Bitcoin, and other times 29. And so if you're running a mining operation with consistent costs, like sometimes you're going to be in the green and sometimes you're going to be in the red. And if there's a significantly long downturn, so we'll just go out to max, and then we'll go over here into 2018, and right, we'll just look at this time period. So you have the 2017 boom, which got up to like $20,000 per Bitcoin, and then went all the way down to 3,000. And this is like, so it stayed pretty low from April of 2018 until April of 2019. So that's a whole entire year that you might have been running at a loss, because you have to keep on mining on the hopes that the price is going to go back up, but you're also incurring costs. And so you have mining operations that aren't going to be able to handle this long downturn. Whereas if you're an individual miner, you can like run your mining rig and you might be making a profit, maybe not too much of a profit, but it doesn't matter because you don't really have any overhead. You probably have another job. So you're not depending on the income from your mining rig, and you can just run it, and then you can choose to hold on to your cryptocurrency as it comes out, or you can choose to sell it. You know, it's no big deal for you because your livelihood isn't dependent on these mining rigs, right? So building a bigger and bigger mining operation can provide more returns that do diminish, but it's not guaranteed, not in the slightest. And so like the idea that the only people that are going to be able to run mining operations are huge mining farms is just wrong, right? You have huge mining farms that will go out of business, and you have little guys that will be able to keep their mining operation running regardless of the market, because they're not dependent on the income from their mining rigs in order to continue. So it's missing like important aspects of the business sense in its oversimplification.
So more would always go to those with the resources to build the bigger rig. No matter what Bitcoin future was envisioned, in the here and now, computer hardware can be bought with dollars. Rather than
Okay, so computer hardware can be bought with dollars. This is true, but computer hardware can also be bought with Bitcoin. Let's just look at this. This is a ASIC mining shop where you can purchase Bitcoin miners. Let's just go with this one, Antminer DR5 cryptocurrency. You can make a purchase for your order with cryptocurrency. You can use 6.9 Bcash. You can use 0.093 Bitcoin. You can use 1.55 Ethereum. Here we go. Using crypto on Newegg. You may have heard that we are now accepting Shiba Inu token, but did you know that we also accept Litecoin, Dogecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and other cryptocurrencies? In fact, we've been accepting digital currencies since 2014. You can purchase mining hardware or computer hardware with cryptocurrencies on Newegg, which is an extremely large online retailer for computer parts. You just have to check out with BitPay. So you can buy computer hardware with cryptocurrencies. So again, incorrect. So let's continue.
Dismantling corrupt power structures, this would just become a new tool for existing wealth. And that's exactly what happened. Thus began an arms race for bigger and bigger processing rigs, followed by escalating demands for the support systems, hardware engineers, HVAC, and operating space needed to put those rigs in.
Yeah, so this is the case. It's very expensive to put together a mining operation. You have to rent out space in order to put together a large one. You have to purchase all of that computer hardware. You have to provide the electricity. You have to provide the HVAC. You have to provide staff. You have to provide a bunch of stuff in order to be able to run a mining operation on a large scale. On a small scale, you don't need any of that stuff. On a small scale, you can put your mining rig in your living room. You can open up a window and you can put a fan next to that window in order to vent out the warm air that's going to be coming off of your mining rig. Done. You don't need to worry about too much HVAC costs. If you do have like air conditioning in your apartment, then, or in your house, then you might have to run that instead of like opening up a window, but you can incur minimal costs from your mining rig and end up in the green without having to deal with all of the overhead, right? All of the overhead cuts into your profits for a mining rig. So instead of making $2 per GPU, you're going to be making like maybe 50 cents or a buck. And then you have to deal with all of the costs and the decline in value of your mining hardware and all of that stuff. So it's not just cut and dry, simple, a simple process.
And don't worry, we're not forgetting the power requirements. These rigs draw an industrial amount of power, and because of the winner-takes-all nature of the competition, huge amounts of redundant work are being done and discarded. Estimates for this power consumption are hard to verify. The data is very complex, spread across hundreds of operators around the globe who move frequently in search of cheap electricity, and it's all pretty heavily politicized. But even conservative estimates from within the crypto mining industry puts the sum energy cost of Bitcoin processing on par with the power consumption of a small industrialized nation.
Okay, so here we have Cambridge Bitcoin Electricity Consumption Index. This is what University of Cambridge estimates, and I'm going to refresh the page here just so we get updated every 24 hours. Okay, so just so we get updated information on what the estimated power consumption of Bitcoin is. So right now we have approximately 138.75 terawatt hours of electricity, approximately. It could be more, it could be less, but this is approximately what it is. So let's compare this against something like gold. So when looking, so here's a Forbes article, and all of the information, of course, is going to be available in the description. All of the links to everything that I'm using. Bitcoin versus gold. Bitcoin isn't competing with other countries. However, it's competing with rival assets such as fiat currencies issued by central banks, or more comparatively as a store of value with gold, a precious metal that is mined on an industrial scale every year. Producing gold for the wedding band on your finger alone generates 20 tons of waste. Gold mining industry produces about 2,500 to 3,000 tons of new gold every single year and consumes 475 million gigajoules of electricity, or around 131.9 terawatt hours. So let's compare that against the 138.57. So it's approximately comparable to gold. And then we have energy output of the banking system, which encompasses brick and mortar branches, printing facilities, computer servers, ATMs, and transportation, put the figure at about 140. So we can take that with a grain of salt, but it's about 140 terawatt hours of electricity. So a little bit less, or sorry, a little bit more than Bitcoin's estimated power consumption. right? But so the next thing that you might say is, yes, but Bitcoin doesn't process as many transactions as the current banking industry, and the banking industry encompasses more people, right? So let's look at how many people are currently inside the banking industry. Here we go. Financial inclusion on the rise, but gaps remain. Global Findex data shows. So right now, approximately 3.8 billion people, or 69% of adults, have a bank account. One, we can greatly increase this by using cryptocurrency. We have about 3.8 billion people using the banking industry, and we don't have 3.8 billion people using Bitcoin. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy there. But with the advent of things like the Lightning Network, allowing for people to transact for fractions of a penny instantaneously, it's a much better system than the current banking industry. It doesn't necessarily need to replace the current banking industry. Not everybody can do away with their bank, and bank provides financial services. Bitcoin doesn't provide financial services. That would probably be more along the lines of using like Ethereum or another smart contract platform in order to get financial services, which is a whole nother layer. We'll be talking about that later. But one golden wedding band generates 20 tons of waste. That is a lot of waste, and it does consume a lot of power, but it provides people an option for their payments, for their peer-to-peer payments, and it basically only requires a cell phone. It requires a cell phone or a computer, and allows for you to safely transfer funds across state borders with minimal fees. Like, there is definitely a debate to be had here, but if we're comparing it against something like gold, which is basically what I would view as the direct competitor of Bitcoin, it's a lot more versatile. It's a lot more, it's better money than gold. Like, it works better as a money. It's limited in supply. $10 quadrillion of gold on this asteroid. So if we're able to get out there and mine the gold, the value of gold drops pretty significantly, because this is way more gold than exists on Earth, I think. If I remember right, there's enough gold on Earth to fill 18 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Heaps of platinum, iron, and nickel destroy commodity prices and cause the world economy to collapse. I mean, it probably wouldn't, though. Like, you wouldn't be able to just bring it back. You'd have to mine it and all of that stuff. But they did find gold out on this asteroid. Like, that would completely collapse the price of gold. And so it's better money because it's limited. Like, there are no other Bitcoin that you're going to be able to find in space. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin, and it's more easily divisible, and it's more easy to transact, and it's easier to transport as well. I heard that there's a Nigerian prince that's been trying to get his gold out of Africa for a while, and he was offering people money in order to help him get his gold out. Okay, so that's obviously a joke. That's been a pretty long running scam, but the Nigerian prince wouldn't have to get people to fund him in order to move his gold out of Africa. Do not, just to be clear, do not send anybody your gold, your money, because they're trying to move gold out of Africa. It's probably a scam. All right, let's keep on going.
Now, evangelists will counter that the global banking industry also uses a lot of power, gesturing at things like idle ATMs humming away all night long, which is, strictly speaking, not untrue. On a factual level, the entire global banking industry does, in fact, use a lot of total electricity. But for scale, it takes 6 hours of that sustained power draw for the Bitcoin network to process as many transactions as Visa handles in 1 minute.
Yeah, so this is a little bit disingenuous because first, we have the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which is able to process a lot more transactions than 4.6 per second. But if you're ignoring the rest of the systems that have to go into place in order to process a Visa transaction, such as Lightspeed or PayPal or Cash App or any of the other systems that need to be in place that charge, I would say, fairly exorbitant fees on the merchant in order to be able to process those transactions, then you're ending up with a much, much more expensive system. And they are making a ton of profit from that system. Your effective rate is the total percentage of your sales, lost to fees. It's easy to calculate. If your monthly sales total is $10,000 and you pay $650 in markup fees, your effective markup calculation is simply 6.5%. So they're saying that a reasonable estimation, it looks like, for markup fees based off of credit card transactions is 6.5%. Way more expensive, right? And this system is slow. Visa might be processing a lot of transactions, but what does processed mean other than the fact that they've earmarked money to eventually make it to the merchant? Maybe that is the system that's currently in place. So it's a little bit disingenuous to throw this out there as like the end all be all when there's more involved here.
And during that time, Visa is using fractions of a cent of electricity per transaction. And that's just Visa. That's one major institution. So, like, yes, globally, the entirety of the banking industry consumes a lot of power, and a non-trivial portion of that is waste that could be better allocated. But it's also the global banking industry for 7 billion people.
Yeah, so not 7 billion people. It's about 3.8 billion people, which is a lot of people, but it's not for 7 billion people. And also you have, you also have things like a hydroelectric plant. Humanity is wasting renewable energy all over the world, and wasted energy is the cheapest of them all. A hydro plant that had paused operations for 9 months found cryptocurrency mining, got the dream client they needed. At the end of 2016, Costa Rica, there we go, it's in Costa Rica, installed hydropower capacity of 2.12 gigawatts, 100% renewable electricity production for a total of 271 days. But there's a lot of wasted electricity inside this system, and so in order to not waste electricity, because you're getting a continuous flow of electricity, but demand is not consistent, then what you end up with is a inefficient system. But if during times that you are not able to, or you have extra production and that electricity is just like getting wasted, then you can put that money into that electricity into cryptocurrency mining, and it helps bring about a profit on those wasted watts of electricity. And this is a example of like how power loads are changing over time. You have what's called the duck curve problem. So part of it, this is getting a little bit into the nitty gritty of the way that power systems work, but I think that this is important to understand in order to understand what's actually going on here. So basically, you have less power being used in the mid-afternoon. It starts to drop off basically when people are going to work because they're not at home anymore, and it spikes when they get home from work. So 5 o'clock, it just ramps up. And electricity generation is not always perfect, but it tends to follow this sort of general pattern. When you have solar power is mostly produced in the middle of the day. When the sun is basically directly overhead is when you're going to get the most electricity generation from solar, right? But it's when you have the least consumption, basically. And also hydroelectric is going to produce a relatively consistent amount of power over time. So you'll only have like a flat line. So like, let's say you're producing that much. Then, you know, you're going to have to find other sources of power during times when the demand is super high, or you're going to end up with a brownout, and you're going to have to figure out a way to use this electricity when demand is super low. And so if you're producing that much power, which it seems like a relatively unreasonable amount, but you can cryptocurrency mine with the gap and actually make money off of that, and then turn off the rigs when the demand is highest, which would be like from 6 p.m. until like 10, let's just say, every single day. So you're making your profit off of the sale of your electricity, and then you're also making your profit off of the difference, and then you turn it off when demand is the highest. It can be a way to improve efficiency of systems, including solar or wind, or any other form of green energy, or any energy source that is not easy to ramp up and ramp down. A lot of where we have to meet this sort of spike in demand is from natural gas. So natural gas is typically what people use in order to ramp up production, because you can easily ramp up natural gas energy generation, and then they turn those off when the demand is super low. But there's still a decent amount of wasted electricity inside the system, and how that can be resolved in part could be cryptocurrency mining. It's an option. There's a mine in Costa Rica, or there's a hydroelectric dam in Costa Rica that is doing exactly this in order to help make sure that they're able to keep their hydroelectric dam running, right? So it's not all necessarily wasted electricity. They're providing work for the system and receiving a reward for doing so.
And not the hobby horse of a few 100,000 gambling addicts. So just to head all this off at the pass, Bitcoin and proof of work cryptocurrency aren't incentivizing a move to green.
They potentially could be, though. That's the thing. It's very difficult to look at exactly how much of the electricity that is being used comes from green sources. But if you're able to utilize pretty cheap electricity, such as solar, solar can be a fairly inexpensive electricity source to use. You just have to make sure that you're not wasting it, which a lot of times means that people use batteries. And batteries are expensive, batteries are heavy, and batteries are what, like, if you put in a solar panel or solar panels on your roof, and then you put in batteries, can allow you to use your solar in order to power your home, but that whole entire setup can be decently expensive to do. Right? And you also have large solar farms that produce power during the wrong times. And so in order to continue to be able to put in more solar panels, one way to be able to do that is to utilize the excess electricity for something like cryptocurrency mining and earn a profit off of that. Right? So it's an option. It's something that you can do.
In energy sources like solar and wind, they are offsetting it. Because electrical consumption, electrical waste, is the value that underpins Bitcoin. Miners spend X dollars in electricity to mine a Bitcoin. They expect to be able to sell that coin for at least X plus profit. When new power sources come online and the price of electricity goes down, they don't let X go down, they build a bigger machine.
So the primary gripe I have here with they don't let X go down, they build a bigger machine. That would be if, like, I could just snap my fingers and get more. Like, let's just say I snap my fingers and I have more mining rigs, right? But that's not the case. Like, this is misleading at best, because you have to make purchases, you have to set up, you have to make sure that you have room for the systems, you have to make sure that you have the staff that's able to monitor the systems. You have to, like, it gets into all of the things I talked about earlier with setting up a mining operation, right? A mining operation is a business that has its overheads, it has its expenses. You can't just snap your fingers and get more stuff. Like, if we're looking at these ASIC miners right here, right? This ASIC miner is $2,769. That's not cheap. And you have other miners that are more expensive, $7,697, right? It's just not that simple. It's just not. All right, so now let's get into it here.
In 2012, Vitalik Buterin, a crypto enthusiast and butthurt warlock main, set out to fix what he saw as the failings and inflexibilities of Bitcoin. Rather than becoming the new digital currency, a thing that people actually use to buy stuff, Bitcoin had become an unwieldy speculative financial instrument, too slow and expensive to use for anything other than stunt purchases.
Yeah, so I disagree with this whole entire assessment based off of the previous information that I provided.
Of expensive cars. It was infested with money laundering and mired in bad.
Okay, let's talk about money laundering. Since he decided to bring it up, let's go over here. NASDAQ, global banks accused of money laundering. A FinCEN leak has global banks under selling pressure this morning. Leaked documents from the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, shows years of illicit movement of funds through the world's biggest bank. Standard Chartered, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, HSBC, and more are accused of laundering over $2 trillion in funds over the last 20 years. Let's look at this. HSBC's money laundering scandal. HSBC Holdings agreement to pay $1.9 billion fine to regulators for serving as a middleman for Mexican drug cartels and enter into a deferred prosecution agreement points to a lack of adequate control processes in compliance with anti-money laundering. Given the bank's size, it appears that it and some of its peers are too big to jail because they are too big to fail. So we have HSBC that is agreeing to pay a fine of $1.9 billion due to money laundering. And I would imagine that the money laundering that they were doing was significantly more than this. Right? So money laundering already exists within the current system. And so people using cryptocurrency, which does have a public ledger, and if you think about it, if all of the Bitcoin transactions are public, then it would actually be easier to investigate whether or not money laundering is occurring than it would be through private banks, which don't publish all of the transactions. And it's a good thing that they don't, because all of that is tied to personal information. Whereas with cryptocurrency, it wouldn't be. It would be easier to find money laundering. It would be easier to figure out where stolen funds are going to. And this has happened a couple of times where people have stolen cryptocurrency and then all of the addresses are public. So you can see where the stolen cryptocurrency went to. But so the current banking system is infested with money laundering if you're well connected enough to be able to get in on the bank's money laundering system. Right? And a public ledger addresses part of this because it allows for the average person or an investigative journalist or anybody to be able to look at transactions and think, this might be related to the Mexican drug cartel, right? That's what would become possible with something like cryptocurrency, which we just don't necessarily know how much money laundering is taking place through the current banking system, right? So money laundering happens.
Press. After the FBI shut down Silk Road, you couldn't even buy drugs with it anymore. In practice, you couldn't do anything with your Bitcoin but bet on it, lock up.
So you probably can still purchase drugs for Bitcoin.
The money you already have in the hopes that Bitcoin goes up later and pray you don't lose it all in a scam, lose access to your wallet, or have it all stolen by an exchange.
So yes, these are all actually possible. You can lose funds in a scam. You can lose access to your wallet, and you can have your money stolen in an exchange. A very good example of this was Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox in 2014 was hacked, and somebody got away with a group of people got away with a lot of Bitcoin, and it crashed the market in 2014, I want to say. So this happens. With great power comes great responsibility, but it doesn't mean though that you have to use your funds in this way. If you want to use a financial institution, you totally can. And there are financial institutions that are popping up to be able to allow you to create an account and then use your funds on their account, such as Coinbase. Coinbase has their own non-custodial wallet. Coinbase has an exchange, so you can swap your cryptocurrency for other cryptocurrency or US dollars and then transfer those into your bank account, right? You have the option to do these things. If you have your funds on an account, there is the possibility that your information gets stolen, and then or hackers are able to break into accounts or something like that. But again, if you have all of your funds in your own wallet, then you're probably fine, because in order to hack a single wallet, it would take so much computation that the hacker would be better served by providing mining power. This is the beauty of proof of work. The hacker would be better served providing mining power to the network than it would be to even attempt to hack a single wallet, because the amount of computations you have to go through is insane. It would take, like, I don't remember how many years, but it would take years in order to basically try and maybe be able to hack a wallet. A very, very long time, when you could just get consistent rewards by providing that computational power towards mining for the network and providing security, right? And so it's actually a beautiful use of game theory in order to incentivize people to provide hash power towards the network rather than attacking the network, right? And that's the beauty of it. So yes, you can have your funds lost or stolen or something like that if you don't back up your funds properly, but you can go through third parties. It's just there's the risk involved with going through a third party, right? And oftentimes it's not even people hacking your phone or doing something crazy like that. It's somebody calling you up and saying, hey, if you send me Bitcoin, I'll send you back double. And there's people that actually do that. There was a pretty well-known hack of Twitter that happened where people were able to post with other people's official accounts, like Bill Gates and Elon Musk, and they tweeted out, they did, it was on their verified accounts, they tweeted out that if you send us Bitcoin, we'll send you back double. And there were a bunch of people that actually did it, right? So there's always the possibility of something like that happens. But if you use your noggin, then for the most part, you should be able to avoid most of these scams or anything like that. Or you can go through a trusted third party, right? Again, you don't have to use a trusted third party, but with great power comes great responsibility. For a lot of people, it might just be better to go through a trusted third party. And that's that.
The result, launched in 2014, was Ethereum, a competing cryptocurrency that boasted lower fees, faster transaction times, a reduced electrical footprint, and most notably, a sophisticated processing functionality. While the Bitcoin blockchain only tracks the location and movement of Bitcoins, Ethereum would be broader. In addition to tracking Ether coins, the ledger would also be able to track arbitrary blocks of data. As long as they were compatible with the structure of the Ethereum network, these blocks of data could even be programs that would utilize the validation network as a distributed virtual machine. Vitalik envisioned this as a vast, infinite machine, duplicated and distributed across thousands or millions of computers, a system onto which the entire history of a new internet could be immutably written, immune to censorship and impossible for governments to take down. He saw it dismantling banks and other intermediary industries, allowing everyone to be their own bank, to be their own stockbroker, to bypass governments, regulators, and insurance agencies. His peers envisioned a future where Ethereum became not just a repository of financial transactions, but of identity, with deeds, driver's licenses, professional credentials, medical records, educational achievements, and employment history turned into tokens and stored, immutable and eternal, on the chain. Through crypto and the Ethereum virtual machine, they could bring all the benefits of Wall Street investors and Silicon Valley venture capitalists to the poorest people of the world, the unbanked and forgotten. This heady, high-minded philosophy is outlined in great detail in the journalistic abortion, The Infinite Machine, by failed journalist turned crypto.
Okay, so a decent amount of what he says seems like it is probably, like, his basic description of Ethereum is, I would say, relatively accurate. Although, like, when we're getting to things such as repository of financial transactions, but of identity, deeds, and drivers, or identities, deeds, driver's licenses.
But of identity, with deeds, driver's licenses, professional credentials, medical records, educational achievements. So there are people that are talking about this. Let's see, blockchain personal health records. So there is a published article related to this where it talks about the possibility of allowing people access to to medical records that they would have been able to access with an account by utilizing blockchain technology. And so you can look into this, but the conclusion of this is the review revealed that although research interest in blockchain public health records, so PHRs, if I remember that correctly, personal health records
interest in blockchain personal health records is increasing and that the space is maturing, this technology is still largely in the conceptual stage. Being the first systematic review on blockchain personal health records, this review should serve as a basis for future review to track the development of the space. So people are considering it, but it's definitely not a mature enough space for this to become the standard. And it goes through and talks about like what cryptocurrencies are and the differences between using like a blockchain versus a consortium versus a private institution in order to sort of look at electronic medical records. And so like it's definitely in its infancy. At some point there might be a system set up that is robust enough to be able to put people's personal health records access to it through some sort of blockchain. But until that point, like we're certainly not there, and I would definitely not recommend that anybody put health records on any sort of blockchain. And here we go. This is like interest in this. So interest is going up among like computer science and engineering people, but the general public and the medical field is definitely not super interested in this, it looks like. And by country, like United States is projected to be a lot less interested in this, whereas places like India are. So concept, prototype, pilot, like, so they are talking about this, they're examining it, they're trying to figure out what might be the best way to do this. And it's a very, very long article if you want to get into it. The link to this article is going to be in the description. And I believe that this is open to the public because I didn't have to log in or anything in order to access this. So you should be able to read the article if you want to, but it's definitely something that's in its infancy and not something that I would recommend at this point in time with current given technologies. Especially, there's a difference between putting an access token on the blockchain and putting the medical records themselves on the blockchain, right? You can develop a system that is private and have an access token, and that access token is owned by the individual, and it doesn't have to be decentralized either. Like, the blockchain can be run by the institution itself, and like every single branch of the institution, for example, could have a node of the network, and then they could have control over the nodes that then would allow for access to those health records and also revocation of those health records, and following the exact same system that they have in place currently, just with like a little bit more standardization and a little bit easier distribution of the database, right? Like, you can utilize that technology without going all in on the, like, putting all of your health records on the Ethereum blockchain, and then like distributing the tokens, and then that's that. Like, the system would definitely have to be a lot more robust than that. There's a lot of development that have to go into that, but at this point in time, like, it would be really silly to put educational or medical records on the blockchain, right? And so that's just something that it basically has to be accepted, and I think pretty much is. So let's continue.
Medical records, educational achievements, and employment history turned into tokens and stored immutable and eternal on the chain. Through crypto and the Ethereum virtual machine, they could bring all the benefits of Wall Street investors and Silicon Valley venture capitalists to the poorest people of the world, the unbanked and forgotten. This heady, high-minded philosophy is outlined in great detail in The Journalistic Abortion, The Infinite Machine, by failed journalist turned crypto shill Camila Russo.
Okay. Also, just a note. Whenever you're trying to debate a person or a community or a topic, you should try and take their best arguments and refute them. And I don't think that that's what he's doing here. On top of that, it seems like he recognizes that that's not what he's doing here. So just like listen to this description of what he's going to refute.
Philosophy is outlined in great detail in The
Journalistic Abortion, The Infinite Machine, by failed journalist turned crypto shill.
By failed journalist turned crypto shill
Camila Russo. Like, is he debating the strongest arguments that are going to be able to be put forward, or did he find some random book that he then could refute the points of. That's what it seems like to me, because I have never heard of this person. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not some sort of an influential person inside the space, but there are other people that I think would probably be better to listen to related to what Ethereum is, such as like the Ethereum Foundation, or there are other resources that you can use online, like in order to figure out information. Like it seems like he's attacking the worst arguments he can find, like attacking the low-hanging fruit. But let's just continue on with this and see what he has to say.
Rousseau. The book is actually really interesting. Not for the merits of the writing, Rousseau fails to interrogate the validity or rationality of even the simplest claims, and falls just shy of hagiography by occasionally noting that something was a bit tacky or embarrassing, but only just shy. She tells florid stories about the impoverished people that Vitalik and friends claim to be working to save, but never once considers that the solutions offered might not actually work, or that the people claiming to want to solve those problems might not even be working on them. That's actually a big issue, since the entire crypto space, during the entire time that Rousseau's book covers, was absolutely awash with astroturfing schemes, where two guys would go to some small community in Laos or Angola, take a bunch of pictures of people at a crypto investing seminar, generate some headlines for their coin or fund, and then peace out.
So he's attributing to cryptocurrency what is a human problem, which is actually something that he talked about earlier, how cryptocurrency wasn't designed to solve the banking industry problems, which technically is true, but that people are using cryptocurrency in order to raise funds and then piecing out. But let's see, I have here the 50 worst charities in America, an article published by Smart Asset, which talks about how these charities are scams. And we have the Kids Wish Network, Cancer Fund of America, Children's Wish Foundation International, American Breast Cancer Foundation, Firefighters Charitable Foundation, Breast Cancer Relief Foundation, International Union of Police Associations, right, etc., etc., etc. There are 50 charities here that have been identified by Smart Asset, and these 50 charities account for almost 1 billion in donations. Most of the money went to the people who collected the donations, right? The percentages spent by these charities on direct aid to victims range from 0% to a high of only 11.1%. Most of the organizations spent between 0.10% and 6 or 8.6%, right? This has nothing to do with cryptocurrency. This is entirely because these people are trying to get as much money as they can and playing on people's emotions in order to get money, right? This is a human problem. This is not a cryptocurrency problem. And also, there are a bunch of charities that are accepting cryptocurrencies for payments. I have not vetted any of these cryptocurrencies, but there is a website that does list out a bunch of charities such as the Internet Archive, Tor Project, Free Software Foundation, etc., that are accepting cryptocurrencies. It's not a huge list, but cryptocurrencies have been used a decent amount in the past for doing charitable donations in international contexts. So this isn't a cryptocurrency problem. This is a human problem.
For years, dudes were going around asking vendors if they could slap a Bitcoin sticker onto the back of the cash register because the optics of making it look like a place takes Bitcoin was cheaper and easier than actually using Bitcoin as a currency. We have an entire decade of credulous articles about how Venezuela and Chile are on the verge of switching entirely to crypto, based entirely on the claim of two trust fund dudes from San Bernardino.
Okay, so I have a problem with this here too, because this was released in January 21st of 2022. But if you look right over here, article from NASDAQ, El Salvador leads the world in adopting Bitcoin as an official currency. This was September the 7th, 2021, and it made headlines through the whole entire cryptosphere when this happened. Basically, you can use cryptocurrency anywhere to make basically any purchase if the vendor is able to accept it. So as long as the vendor is able to get like internet connection and is able to have a wallet, which they have their own wallet that they wanted people to use. I believe it was Chive. Every citizen $30 in Bitcoin if they sign up for a government digital wallet. And let me see if I can find this. So there's definitely a little bit of controversy here, but basically now you can use US dollars and you can use Bitcoin in El Salvador. And I think that there are other countries that are eventually going to follow suit, especially countries that don't have much in the way of financial institutions. You can use cryptocurrencies more easily because all it takes is a cell phone and an internet connection in order to be able to transact with cryptocurrencies, and it can be done extremely cheaply when compared with credit cards. So I mean, it could be that all the research was done for this video before El Salvador decided to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender, as a currency that you can use basically anywhere. But on top of that, Venezuela is a good example of a country that has been hyperinflating their currency, and people have been going to things like Bitcoin because of the nature of Bitcoin in order to protect their money, because hyperinflation is not good if you're holding onto your money in cash. Whereas if you're holding something that is a hard asset, such as Bitcoin, because it's limited in nature, even though it's completely digital, it's still a hard asset, and protect your money from hyperinflation, right? Like, this is something that people can do and have done with cryptocurrency. So it's just like it's wrong or misleading. Take your pick on this one.
Verge of switching entirely to crypto, based entirely on the claim of two trust fund dudes from San Bernardino. A whole 10 years littered with discarded press releases about Dell and Microsoft and Square bringing crypto to the consumers before just quietly discontinuing their services after a year or two when they realized.
I'm pretty sure you can still use cryptocurrency on Square. Let me pull this up. Let's pull up Square. Let's see. Let me actually search for something a little bit better. Square cryptocurrency. Square is building a decentralized finance business using Bitcoin. This was July 16th, 2021. Jack Dorsey, creator, co-founder, and chairman of Twitter. I don't believe that he is the chairman anymore. I'm not sure. But the company is focused on building an open development platform, the sole goal of making it easy to create non-custodial, permissionless, and decentralized financial services. So Jack Dorsey is actually pretty friendly towards cryptocurrency and is building up Square's Cash app. I'm pretty sure, yeah, you can buy Bitcoin on Cash App. Send Bitcoin to a Cash App user, buy or sell Bitcoin using Cash App. Yeah. So like you can, but there are other businesses that are accepting cryptocurrency. Granted, it's not a ton of businesses, but I think that the list is going to improve as time goes on. A lot of the times it's indirect because of the fluctuating value in Bitcoin, for example, or of all cryptocurrencies. It doesn't make a ton of sense for a lot of businesses to hold on to cryptocurrency unless they think that the cryptocurrency is going to go up. If I remember right, Tesla made more money off of their cryptocurrency investment than they did off of selling cars the first year that they purchased Bitcoin and started accepting Bitcoin. Although they did stop Bitcoin payments. So, you know, there is that. But the more places that start accepting Bitcoin, the more that people are going to be able to use it. And the more that people are going to be able to use it, the more people will. And that, like, it's a chicken and the egg problem. But people are going to, I think, be more open to using cryptocurrency as it continues to grow in usability. Yeah, so you have Twitch. Twitch removed it in 2019, but re-enabled it in June. Pizza Hut, Miami Dolphins, Dallas Mavericks, Virgin Galactic, Norwegian Air, Namecheap, Cheap Air, Gift, Newegg, Internet Archive, Pirate Bay, 4chan, Mega NZ, Amazon through Amazon gift cards, ExpressVPN. So there, AMC, there are businesses that are accepting Bitcoin for transactions. It's not a huge number, but it's sort of like the beginning of this whole entire thing. Like it only came into existence in 2008. Like it hasn't actually been around that long, and more people are adopting it. More and more people are becoming accepting of it. You have JP Morgan. I believe that if you go to the JP Morgan website, let's see, was it JP Morgan? They're becoming more accepting. Maybe I'm confusing JP Morgan with another company. Maybe it was Charles Schwab. Let's see. Snap. I can't remember which company it was, but they at first said that cryptocurrency was a scam, and then they added it onto their front page. But I mean, you're going to see people start to use it more, I think, as time goes on. So we'll just have to see basically if adoption continues to increase, but overall, I'm pretty sure it's increasing, and I think it will continue to. But even so, like, you can still sell your cryptocurrency for dollars and then use your dollars to buy stuff. So there are institutions like Nexo, which will allow you to basically borrow against your cryptocurrency in order to make payments. And this is a Visa debit card, so it'll work with everywhere that Visa is accepted, which is a lot of different places. And you can more easily use your cryptocurrency in order to make purchases. Right? I think that eventually you won't have to use something like Nexo, because there'll be a lot of places that just accept cryptocurrency in general. But like you can use the Nexo card in order to be able to make purchases, right? So the more systems are in place like this, and the more companies that are able to accept cryptocurrency through things like BitPay. Right, so let's go over to business. Accept or send, right, Bitcoin, Sheeb, etc. And they charge 1% fees in order for you to be able to accept cryptocurrency payments for your business, right? So the more things like this that exist, the more easily it will be for people to accept cryptocurrencies directly. And so I think that these two things, for example, and there's other cards that exist. It's not just Nexo card, like Gemini is producing their own card. I think Coinbase is also producing their own card. The more of these that exist, the more that people will be able to use it. And a lot of people will probably just cut out the middleman and accept cryptocurrency payments directly because it's so cheap. It can be extremely cheap to use, right? That not every single cryptocurrency is cheap to use, but I think most of them are.
The demand isn't actually there. The fact that development of Ethereum.
And actually, let's look at this here really quick, because I'm a little bit skeptical. Let's see if Dell is accepting cryptocurrency. Okay, so it looks like they are not still accepting cryptocurrencies. Yeah, 2014. Let's see, but it doesn't look like Dell is going to be among the list. Yeah, probably not. KFC, fast food, sports teams, Overstock, AT&T, Twitch, Amazon, kind of. Yeah, no, Dell is not among the list. So Dell is no longer accepting cryptocurrencies. But as adoption increases, I think that it would be reasonable to expect that they will start accepting cryptocurrencies again, either directly or
continuing their services after a year or two when they realize the demand isn't actually there. The fact that development of Ethereum was extremely dependent on a $100,000 fellowship grant from Peter Thiel is mentioned, but the ideological implications of that connection are never explored.
Yeah, so, okay. I don't know very much about this Peter person, but I do have an article here that talks about the best investments, the 10 best investments of Peter Thiel, and it's Ansana, Lyft, which is a very well-known service, Yelp, also very well-known, Airbnb, also very well-known, Zynga, very well-known. Let's keep on going. Twilio, I don't know what Twilio is, a cloud communications platform. Okay, so it's gonna make me click next on every single one. Spotify. Oh wow, really? Okay, yeah. Spotify, Palantir, PayPal, Facebook. So I'm sure that you've heard of most of these companies, especially Facebook, which is now Meta. But PayPal, like, is PayPal now tainted because Peter Thiel decided to donate Peter Thiel, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, decided to invest some money into it. Like, I don't think that that's the case. So, like, sure, Peter Thiel might be a negative person. I don't know enough about him in order to make a judgment call on his person or personality. He could be a terrible person. He could be a great person. I have no idea. But like, I think that it's kind of irrelevant that he invested in it, especially considering the other projects that he's invested in. And those projects are huge. Like, are you not going to use PayPal because he invested in it? Because he's not necessarily a good person in your eyes? Like, that's a judgment call to be used by you. But PayPal is massive. Facebook is massive. Lyft is massive. Like, these are huge companies. And so I don't think that we should be entirely judging Ethereum based off of the fact that it received a grant from a billionaire investor.
Entire subject occupies a single paragraph, sprinkled as flavor into a story about Vitalik and his co-developers airing their grievances about some petty infighting. The book is mostly useful for its value as a point of reference against reality. It's a very thorough, if uncritical, document of absolutely insane claims. The idea was that the traits of blockchain technology, such as having no central point of failure, being uncensorable, cutting out intermediaries, and being immutable, could also benefit other applications besides money. Financial instruments like stocks and bonds, and commodities like gold were the obvious targets, but people were also talking about putting other representations of value, like property deeds and medical records, on the blockchain too. Those efforts, admirable considering Bitcoin hadn't and still hasn't been adopted widely as currency, were known as Bitcoin 2.0. I love this paragraph because it...
Yeah, so I don't necessarily know who might be talking about like adding the actual medical records themselves onto blockchain. From what I understand, the article that I was looking at basically adding access tokens to personal health records onto the blockchain, but we're still really, really far away from that. The foundation might be there through the current blockchain system. Blockchain technology and maritime shipping, an exploration of use cases in U.S. maritime transportation sector. Submitted to the U.S. Maritime Administration, prepared by these people. And it talks about different things, but basically the abstract or the introduction is blockchain technology, which first emerged in 2008, was initially used to facilitate transactions of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. Often described as a disruptive technology, blockchain use has since increased dramatically in numerous applications, from the energy sector to real estate to finance. Indeed, some see blockchain as a groundbreaking solution to many of society's problems. This report explores the potential for blockchain in maritime sector and sheds light on if and how blockchain might align with or run counter to goals and objectives of stakeholders in the maritime sector. This report presents use cases of blockchain technology in the maritime sector and is divided into three main parts. Part one, we present 4 use cases of blockchain in the maritime sector. 1, fuel quality, traceability, and assurance. 2, shipment tracking along with supply chain. 3, smart bills of lading. And 4, smart contracts in shipment delivery validation. Granted, this doesn't completely cover every single possible issue with the maritime shipping sector, but a more robust and easily accessed standard by which different groups, companies, or institutions can use in order to keep track of all of these things would make it easier to figure out what exactly is going on rather than what they're basically currently using, which is paper in a lot of places. So by consolidating these things into a database that's easily accessible and distributed, if they choose to distribute it, because they don't have to use any of the existing blockchains out there, they can make their own blockchain. It could potentially see a lot of potential positives. They're talking about sulfur levels in the fuels, which are bad. Transactions involving paper documentation often require physical inspection of documents, resulting in high transaction costs for shipments, and an estimated 20% of operational budgets are due to poor information management. Brokers also increase costs substantially, right? And so if they were to use blockchain, like here we go, according to IBM, out of the total cost of $2,000 to move a container of avocados from Mombasa to Rotterdam, paperwork costs approximately $300 or 15%. IBM estimates that complete digitization of the shipping process could save shipping carriers up to $38 billion per year. The desire for faster, more streamlined transactions and tracking of shipments will likely increase as the shipping industry handles and transports increasing volumes and as customers demand better, more accurate, and timely information. Right, and so this is actually a pretty long article. It looks like it's 70 pages. So there's a decent amount of information here, but basically it's examining how we can use blockchain technology, which is just a distributed database that's able to be accessed using cryptography. That's essentially what blockchain technology is. Would allow for better shipping to the tune of approximately 20% saved costs, like because 20% of costs is due to paper records and checking those paper records. Right. So this is something that is an actual use case for blockchain technology, using something like Ethereum to be able to be done. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be Ethereum, but this is just an example of a use case of blockchain technology.
It outlines just how disconnected from reality the people actually building cryptocurrencies really are. They don't understand anything about the ecosystems they're trying to disrupt. They only know that these are things that can be conceptualized as valuable and assume that because they understand one very complicated thing, programming with cryptography, that all other complicated things must be lesser in complexity and naturally lower in the hierarchy of reality. Nails easily driven by the hammer that they have created. The idea of...
So this is very hyperbolic, but I don't personally know of anybody that thinks this way. Doesn't mean that those people don't exist. But just like I just showed with this right here, blockchain technology and maritime shipping, like there are things that can be streamlined using this technology. It doesn't necessarily need to be a decentralized, immutable ledger, even though I think that my preference towards any sort of like blockchain setup should be decentralized and should be immutable. The type of database technology that we have here that has been pioneered through the use of Bitcoin, which I think that Bitcoin is probably one of the best applications for blockchain technology that we have at this point, in part due to a number of factors. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. But this is a potential use case for blockchain technology. So, yeah, I mean, the idea of putting medical records on a public, decentralized, trustless blockchain is, at this point in time, not a very good idea. But as we talked about earlier, what they were talking about wasn't necessarily like putting the medical records themselves on the blockchain, just putting an access token onto the blockchain. And if it's a centralized system and not if it's more centralized and basically controlled by the medical institutions, this would create a little bit more standardization for the ability to access medical records, and also would allow them control over those access tokens, so that you can use it as a centralized institution in order to be able to like revoke access token or to create a new access token that then can be used by the person. Like, let's say they lose access to their own access token. In much a similar way, an account would be created. But like, you can put this access token on an account that you then have access to, and might streamline the process and make it a little bit better, a little bit easier, a little bit more consistent across various medical institutions, for example. But yeah, I agree. No, putting medical records on the blockchain is a bad idea. But what I described is not actually in too many ways dissimilar from the current system that they have with accessing medical records. It would basically be a pretty good idea to standardize all of those systems, and blockchain allows for that. So, all right, continue.
Putting medical records on a public, decentralized, trustless blockchain is absolutely nightmarish, and anyone who proposes it should be instantly discredited. The fact that Russo fails to question any of this is journalistic malpractice.
Yeah, so, and then he attacks Camilla Russo, but like, actually attack something that is more trusted, like attack actually trusted things. Attack this article on medical. Okay, this tab search is a little bit has a little bit of issues. So here we go. Attack this article, because this is what I would argue is a much more robust thing to attack. And they're not saying that they should use it. They're just examining the possibility of using blockchain technology in order to more easily set up the ability for people to be able to access their already public or accessible pieces of information, right? So it's just a expansion of this instead of the current system, right? Attack this. Don't attack Camilla Russo, who you don't think is a very good indication of what's going on here. Like,
immutable and eternal on the chain, through crypto and the Ethereum virtual machine, and forgotten. This heady high so. The fee is outlined in great detail in the journalistic abortion, The Infinite Machine, by failed journalist turned crypto shill Camilla Russo.
Right, like that doesn't sound like you grant them very much credence. So why are you using them as your primary source for everything related to Ethereum?
Who proposes it should be instantly discredited. The fact that Russo fails to question any of this is journalistic malpractice. Now, in terms of improvements over Bitcoin, Ethereum has many. It's not hard.
So this is hyperbolic, and I think that it's wrong. Bitcoin doesn't suck. Bitcoin has its place, it has its purpose, and I think that it does what it's designed to do really well. And I think that the improvements that have been made help it along on this journey. And also, I think that if it continues to improve, which I think that it will, then there will be more cheap and easier ways for it to be used. And it's already pretty cheap and easy to use. Again, like this estimate is 1 input, 2 outputs, SegWit, and 1 hour of confirmation time. Puts the fee at 80 cents, which again, better than credit card processors for businesses, right? So it's a pretty good system, and it works. It's been up since 2008 without really any major issues other than like a couple of points of time where we had increased fees. That's it. There haven't been any major issues with Bitcoin since its inception in 2008, and it's been constantly running since then, and it's only going to get better. So I disagree with this hyperbolic statement that Bitcoin sucks. It doesn't suck.
Bitcoin sucks. In terms of problems with Bitcoin, Ethereum solves none of them and introduces a whole new suite of problems driven by the techno-fetishistic egotism of assuming that programmers are uniquely suited to solve society's problems.
Yeah, so it seems like a little bit of a straw man to me, and also a little bit hyperbolic, assuming that programmers are uniquely suited to solve society's problems. Like, I don't think that programmers are uniquely suited to solve society's problems. I don't know anybody who does. There are probably people that think this, but those people are probably programmers. And And I think that the general sentiment among people that use cryptocurrencies such as like Bitcoin and Ethereum, I don't think that this is the case. Like I'd be willing to bet that if you put like a poll on r/cryptocurrency and ask them this question, a bunch of people would say no. A good number of people would say no. So also on top of that, Ethereum doesn't necessarily solve problems of Bitcoin, but it does expand functionality and allows for things such as Uniswap, so that you can, in a decentralized manner, swap cryptocurrencies for other cryptocurrencies by just connecting your wallet and swapping the cryptocurrencies. So if you already have crypto, or if you get paid in crypto, this can be a good way to do that. On top of that, there are layer 2 solutions, such as Loopring, which is like a roll up. But you can go into the app, and once you connect your wallet, you can make trades for really, really cheap. Right, so let's just say I wanted to swap 1,000 Loopring for 0.3496 ETH. I don't want to connect my wallet or anything like that. But the fee is nothing. The fee is nothing. So pretty darn cheap. Yeah, I think that there's not any fee right now on Loopring swaps. So maybe this isn't the best example. So let's do Aave. Okay, so maybe it won't show all of the details until I actually process the transaction. Yeah, so the fee for doing this swap for Aave for ETH was 0.00003 ETH. So let's just look at how much that actually is by going to CoinGecko, which has currently up-to-date information as far as I'm aware. On current prices, and that is approximately 10 cents. So that is silly cheap. That's not very expensive at all. Actually, let's look at this here really quick. How much does it cost to buy stock broker? Okay, so it looks like a lot of brokerages are charging $0 commission. Speed Traders, $2.95. How about $0 per trade? Active investor, I don't see any reason to pay $10 or even $5 for commission. Okay, so there are a lot of brokerages that are charging $0 per trade. Okay, so it looks like a lot of brokerages have gotten rid of their commission, but they do sell. Here, do brokerages. If I understand correctly, they do sell personal information. So this is Norton. You can take what they say with a grain of salt. Oh, data brokers. Data brokers. So I said brokerages. Investment brokerages sell data. Let's see. brokerage fees, so trade commission, mutual fund transaction fees, expense ratio, annual fee charged by mutual funds, index funds, and exchange traded funds as a percentage of your investment on the fund. Okay, so they do still take fees off of what you own. So you are paying for it in the end, even if you have $0 in fees per trade. When you're investing in funds and stuff, you are losing a percentage over time. Whereas something like Loopring or Uniswap, you own the funds that are inside your wallet, and while it might cost to transact, it is funds that you own and they're not going to be siphoned off from you. And actually there's a lot of places in which you can make money off of your cryptocurrency that is sitting in their account. So in much in the same way that a bank operates, these third parties will utilize your funds, and you can actually get money off of that, but you don't have to use them. So let's continue on with the video.
Vitalik wants his invention to be an infinite machine, so let's ask what that machine is built to do. In order to really understand the full scope of this, we do need to dig a bit more into the technical aspects, because that technical functionality informs the way that the rest of the system behaves. In a very McLuhanist way, the machine shapes the environment around it. As already mentioned, a blockchain consists of two broad fundamental components, the ledger and the consensus mechanism. All currently popular blockchains use an append-only ledger. Now this is, on its own, not that remarkable. Append-only is just a database setting that only allows new entries to be added to the end of the current database. Once something is written to the database, it's read-only. Standard applications are typically things like activity logs, which is conceptually all a blockchain really is, a giant log of transactions. The hitch is that it's decentralized, with elected participants hosting a complete copy of the entire log, and this is where the second component comes in, the consensus mechanism. All validating participants, called nodes, have a complete copy of the database, and no one copy is considered to be the authoritative copy. Instead, there is a consensus mechanism that determines which transactions actually happened. This is all the proof of work stuff. Proof of work isn't the only consensus mechanism, but it's popular because it's very easy to implement by just cloning Bitcoin, and is resilient against the kind of attacks that crypto enthusiasts care about. It's a very brute force solution, but legitimately, if you want a network of ledgers where no one trusts anyone else, just making everyone on the network do extreme amounts of wasted duplicate work is a solution. One of the major problems that this machine solves is what's called the double spend problem. How do you stop someone from spending the same dollar twice? If someone tries, how do you determine which transaction really happened? Banks solve this problem by not correlating account balance with any specific dollar, processing transactions first come first serve, which they track with central resources, and punishing users with overdraft fees for double spending. Eschewing a central solution, cryptocurrencies rely on their consensus mechanism. The most popular alternative to proof of work is proof of stake, where validators post collateral of some kind, usually whatever currency is endemic to the chain, with the amount of collateral determining their odds of being rewarded the validation bounty for any given transaction. The main proposal of proof of stake is that it significantly reduces the wasted power problems of proof of work, but it's less resilient than proof of work. On the energy cost side of things, proof of stake is still inefficient, just by virtue of the sheer volume of redundancy, but on a per user basis, it's at least inefficient on the scale of like an MMO as opposed to a steel foundry. This is difficult to assess because the most popular proof of stake chains are still unpopular and low traffic in the scope of things.
Okay, yeah, so this is where I have to question how old the information that he was utilizing in order to come up with the data for this video is, because if we look here on CoinGecko, which is just basically a website that looks at market data for cryptocurrencies and lists them in order by market cap by default. So if you go to CoinGecko, you'll be able to see like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tether, Binance. It used to be Binance Smart Chain. They probably changed the name of this. Let's see, what is it called? It doesn't say. It's just Binance Coin. Okay. But if we look here, number 6 is Solana. And Solana is a proof of stake cryptocurrency, right? Which is not very far from the top. Terra, I believe, is a proof of stake cryptocurrency. I'm not super informed on Terra. Let's see. The Terra protocol one's on a proof of stake blockchain. Yeah, so Terra is proof of stake as well. Cardano is proof of stake. I believe that Avalanche is also proof of stake. Let's see. doesn't say. Proof of stake. Okay, it does say. So Avalanche is proof of stake. Polkadot is proof of stake. So while the top coins, Bitcoin and Ethereum, are proof of work, I'm not entirely sure about Binance Coin, but Tether and USD Coin are stable coins. I don't believe that they have any sort of staking mechanism. A lot of the top 10 coins, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, are all proof of stake coins, and they will give you varying rewards based off of their protocol. So the ones that I'm most familiar with are Cardano and Polkadot, and also Algorand and Polygon. And so I will try and talk about the ones that I am familiar with in order to make sure that I don't provide any information that is that could be considered potentially misleading. But if I remember correctly, Cardano will give you about 6% in rewards for staked coins, and Polkadot will give you about 10% of staked coins, and Algorand will give you, if I remember right, 6%. But just to make sure, let me double check this right here. Let's look at current estimated staking rewards. Okay, delegation reward percentage is about 4.6% if you delegate 10,000 ADA. Let's see if that number changes as I drop zeros. 4.6%. So it looks like it's about 4.6%. Yeah. So Cardano is going to give you about 4.6% if you delegate or if you stake your Cardano. Let's look at Polkadot. So reward is about 14%, adjusted reward, adjusted by the inflation of the network supply. Okay, so you're making about 14%, but because it's a relatively inflationary currency, you are going to get 5.8%. So that's 5.8% after adjusting for inflation, which actually is a lot. Let's look at other cryptocurrencies. So Polygon. Or actually, let's just skip over to Algorand. Let's see here. Because Ledger, current annual yield on Algorand is about 5 to 6%. So Ledger says it's about 5 to 6%. So you gain access to 5 or 6% by just owning Algorand and having it inside of your wallet. Now, let's compare that against current investment vehicles. So we have CDs, which is certificate of deposit. Basically what you do is you give the bank a certain amount of money, and then after the term is up, they will give you a certain amount of money on top of the money that you gave. So if you give the bank 1 year give your bank the money for 1 year, they will give you 0.2%. Now, keep in mind, this is not adjusted for inflation. And the current inflation rate in the United States is about 7 or 7.9%. But if we look beyond this sort of unusual year, annual inflation rate is around 2-ish%. So we'll just say, for the sake of argument, that it's around 2% inflation. Right now it's a lot higher, and it can go higher and lower. But so let's just say about 2%. So you're actually losing money putting your money into a CD. A 5-year jumbo CD is 0.37%. So you're making way less than inflation. And you can see how this has changed over time. It's like 14% or 0.14% to 0.2%, right? So CDs are not going to be giving you very much. This one, if you lock up your money for 6 months, is giving you 0.6%, so way less than standard inflation, right? So let's look at other investment vehicles. We have the S&P 500. S&P 500, which is a weighted index of the top 500 stocks, or companies, I should say, companies with stocks. Since its inception is 10.49%. So basically you use one of those investment brokers I was talking about earlier in order to put your money into the S&P 500, and then you can expect to receive somewhere between negative like 23% or positive 20-30%, but on average it goes up about 10% per year. And certain times where it goes down, certain times where it goes up, but overall it typically averages out to about 10.67, and I think after you end up with fees and inflation and all of that stuff, it ends up being around 7%. So if you put your money into an investment vehicle such as the S&P 500 and invest it long term, then you're looking at about 7% inflation, right? So these are the financial tools that people who are relatively wealthy already have access to. But if you just want to hold on to your money and just make a consistent amount, you are looking at getting very, very small yield on your money. So money that's sitting inside the bank account is going to give you about 0.75%, right? This is absolutely tiny. Holding funds inside your Algorand wallet is going to be netting you about 5 or 6%. Transaction fees are tiny, and they take not very much time to process, right? So like this is how you stake it. You just basically put your funds inside your wallet, you set up your wallet, you receive the funds, and then now you're staking. And that's how you get access to that 5 or 6%. Cardano, you have to delegate. Polkadot, you have to delegate, but you're ending up with adjusted for inflation about 5.87%. But it's an investment vehicle, or it's a way for you to make a decent amount off of the funds you already have. And even if it's not a proof of stake cryptocurrency, like let's say you don't mind using a centralized institution. So let's look at, we've got Nexo, right? Here we go, current APYs. So Cardano would give you 4%, but we're not worried about that. Bitcoin would give you 4%. But you can get up to 6% on that. So if you buy some of their token and then lock it up, you can get up to 6%. There's also BlockFi. You can get 4% on your Bitcoin, APY, or 3.5% on your Litecoin. Let's look at Celsius. Which is another one. So let's just look at Bitcoin. 5% on your first Bitcoin. And then looks like you can get up to 6.55% on your first Bitcoin. So if you don't mind using a central institution, there's all of these institutions that I'm aware of, and there's probably other ones that will pay you in order to hold your cryptocurrency with them. Now, you have to understand that there's going to be risks involved with that, but this is something that you can do in order to earn interest on your funds to a much greater degree than normally you would be able to within the current banking system. I mean, you're looking at fractions of a percent with certificates of deposit or CDs, and fractions of a percent within your bank account, or inheriting basically the risk of the return on the S&P 500 in order to achieve approximately 7% return when you account for inflation. These are all tools that the financially wealthy already have access to, and you potentially do if you also open up like an investment account or that kind of stuff, or you can use something like cryptocurrency in order to be able to gain access to these sorts of financial tools without having to go through any sort of brokerage or anything else, and also facilitate like the growth of the decentralized internet. And then I have to leave these up because I am going to be including the links in the description. So all of this is going to be available in the description below. So here we go.
Heavily centralized. Claims about scalability are backed up by nothing but the creator's word. Proof of stake is also significantly more complex because they're now...
Whoa, hold on. Okay, yeah. So Solana processes it is currently processing around 2,158 transactions per second, and the average cost in order to process those transactions is fractions of a penny. Right? So the idea that proof of stake cryptocurrencies are not able to process these transactions is a little bit silly. Let's see. We also have Algorand, which is also processing transactions for fractions of a second. I don't think they have their transactions per second up on their main page, but okay, so they do actually. It's processing 19 transactions per second. So not nearly as many as Solana, but that's also probably because demand on the network isn't very high. As demand on the network increases, this would probably increase a decent amount. But Solana is processing a lot of transactions and has processed a lot of transactions for really cheap, right? So the idea that they are slow and expensive and not popular is kind of silly.
Difficult to assess because the most popular proof of stake chains are still unpopular and low traffic in the scope of things, heavily centralized. Claims about scalability are backed up by nothing but the creator's word.
So the thing about blockchains is that you can get all of this information verified because all of the data is available on the blockchain. So it's not backed up by nothing but the creator's words. It's backed up by the blockchain, and the blockchain would show these transactions. You'd be able to look up the transaction and what address and all of that stuff that the transactions are going to. So so if you were to go to something like the Cardano Explorer, let's see, you can see that within this epoch, which is a 5-day period, they processed 101,000 transactions. Not an insane number of transactions. Oh wait, this is the current epoch. So the last epoch, this would actually be the last 5-day period. So that's 546,000 transactions. So not a ton of transactions, but still, these blockchains haven't been pushed to their limit yet, I don't think. So these are all of the transactions that are basically waiting on Solana. Like it's just processing the transactions as they come in extremely quickly. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin take a little bit longer if you want to do an on-chain transaction, but if you do an off-chain transaction with the Lightning Network, it can be relatively instantaneous for silly cheap. So yeah, I don't know what exactly he's talking about.
Proof of stake is also significantly more complex because there now needs to be some mechanism for determining who gets to do the validations and also determining how audits are conducted, and then the question of who has control over that system and whether or not someone can gain control of that system or control over the whole stake by just buying out the staking pool, etc., etc., etc. Proof of stake also even more.
So staking pools is a thing that sometimes can happen with certain cryptocurrencies, but not every single cryptocurrency is going to have that. I think Ethereum already has some pretty popular stake pools because they're moving over to proof of stake, and so the proof of stake system is currently the proof of stake system is currently being run on the testnet, and there are already like stake pools that are getting set up because you have to have 32 Ethereum in order to stake on Ethereum network, and 32 Ethereum as of the time of this video is there we go. Approximately $110,000, which is not feasible for most people. But if you want to stake Algorand, for example, you only need to have a wallet and you need to have one algo, which is about 94 cents. Now, I don't know about you, but I think most people can afford the 94 cents that would be necessary in order to set up an Algorand wallet and move in the algo, and then you'd be earning 5 to 6% on that. So like, let's just say you have 100 algo, then you have $94. I think that's feasible for most people, and then you're already earning 5 to 6% on that. And then I believe that if you're using something like BitPay, all right, so yeah, this is all of the cryptocurrencies that they accept. But I imagine that that number is going to continue to expand if they're starting to accept Shiba Inu, which is a relatively small meme coin. Let me just pull this up. Okay, it's number 15, so it's actually not that small. It's right there. Yeah, so that's actually pretty big. But they'll continue to expand this in order to be able to accept more cryptocurrencies, and then you'll be able to decide what cryptocurrency you want to hold on to, whether that's a stable coin that's pegged to something like the US dollar by using assets as a backing, or Tether. Do they not accept Tether? They don't accept Tether. Or Tether, which is a cryptocurrency that's backed up basically by dollars or dollar equivalents. Whole entire controversy related to that whole thing, but that's kind of like the purpose of cryptocurrency, is to make it so that you don't have to use a third party such as Tether in order to be able to exchange value. So something like DAI utilizes only basically public information in order to show what is backing up their cryptocurrency, and that's what pegs it to the dollar. But I digress a little bit. It is exceptionally difficult to take over a whole entire stake, especially if you're staking from your phone or your personal computer and not going into a stake pool for something like Ethereum, and instead using something like Polkadot or Cardano or Algorand, etc. Then they would have to actually personally hack you or convince you to send them your funds when you don't need to, because you shouldn't fall for it, especially with something like Algorand, because it's so easy. It just starts telling you about the rewards you're earning and doesn't have any sort of process for that. But again, I digress a little bit. Let's continue on with
that system or control over the whole stake by just buying out the staking pool, etc., etc., etc. Proof of stake also even more explicitly rewards the wealthy who have the capital to both stake and spend. It's also even more explicitly exclusionary. Ethereum's proposed proof of stake migration has a buy-in of 32 Ether, which at the time of writing is about $130,000. So really only early adopters and the wealthy can actually meaningfully participate for more than just crumbs.
Okay, so here's the fundamental problem I have with this. Ethereum, sure, not exactly the greatest proof of stake system, but with Cardano, I believe you only need one Cardano in order to be able to stake. Polkadot, I think you need 80 dot in order to be able to stake, which is approximately 1,750 $52.80, which is a decent amount, but you don't have to be uber wealthy in order to be able to have $1,700.52 in a savings account. Even though like most people probably don't. If you're using something like these proof of stake cryptocurrencies, you have access to the financial tools that the uber wealthy already have access to. Like if you're poor and all you have is the funds that are inside your bank account, then you're getting 0.75 on your money, which is basically nothing. And also if you account for inflation, that's like negative 1.25%. So you're losing 1.25% of your money. If you hold your money in Bitcoin, one Bitcoin is always worth one Bitcoin. So you're going to be maintaining that amount of Bitcoin over time. Or if you're using a financial institution like Nexo, Celsius, BlockFi, then you'd be getting anywhere from 1% to 6%. I think 6.55 was the highest percent yield there. Again, going through a centralized institution, but you're getting basically the same level of returns that can be expected for the S&P 500, which is something that a lot of wealthy or uber wealthy people do, is they take their money, they invest it, they're receiving 7% annual return on their funds when you account for inflation, and then like fees and stuff. So you can anticipate like maybe 6.5%, 7%, 8.5%, depending on the year and that kind of thing. But wealthy people already have access to all of this stuff. And if you look at the current wealth distribution inside places like the United States is basically where I'm going to go to, because the United States is where I'm from. I'm most familiar with. But if you look at the wealth distribution, you have the top 1% having access to $45.8 trillion. The next 9% having access to $53.34 trillion. The next 50%, the 50 to 90% bottom, is going to be $3.25 trillion. So the 50 to 90%. So everybody above the average, the mean. And then the bottom 50% having access to $3.73 trillion. The bottom 50% are the people that really need to have access to these sorts of financial tools and are not going to be able to hold their money in a investment vehicle that's going to be able to give them 8% or 7%, 6.5%, 8.5%, somewhere around there, returns on their investment. Whereas even like the laziest of the top 1% are going to be able to take most of their money and put that into investments, which then earn them that percentage. So giving people access to something like Algorand, where they can earn 5 to 6% off of doing essentially nothing, and those rewards are calculated and compounded instantaneously, basically, because the rewards just continue stacking up. They're going to be getting at least something. They're going to be getting at least something, which is more than the negative 1.25% at best they would get inside of a this bank account, or Ally, or American Express National Bank, or Discover Bank, or any of these other ones. So it's better for the majority of people to be able to gain access to these financial tools that they don't have access to, and that the uber wealthy or even like the upper middle class have access to. If we could use Algorand instead of if we could use Algorand or Bitcoin or any of the other cryptocurrencies basically that are within the top 10 that I know of, like Polkadot, Cardano, Bitcoin, just some of my favorite cryptocurrencies, so they're the ones I'm biased towards, then the average person would be better off, which I think cuts against the central premise of his argument here.
This is, in turn, compounding inherent problems with the long-term growth of the chain. Even if you solve the escalating power requirements of proof of work, the data requirements of storing the chain and participating as a validator are also prohibitive in a way that inevitably centralizes power in the hands of a few wealthy operators.
85 terabytes per year is totally fine, right? Like, because 85 terabytes per year, like if you have even one person that just keeps buying like $100 hard drive, like I think once every month, then they can store it, right? Like it's something like that. So it's too big for just like a casual user that just wants to run the chain on their laptop, but one dedicated user who cares, like they can totally afford to store the chain. So 85 terabytes not a big deal, right? But once you crank that number higher, there comes a point at which it starts becoming a really big deal.
The major downside of all these systems.
Okay, so what he's talking about is the Ethereum blockchain is pretty large, but if we go back to Newegg, the most that you need in order to run a Bitcoin node at this point in time, if I understand correctly, is 1 terabyte. And the Bitcoin blockchain has been running since 2008. So maybe if you want to run it for another 2008, 9, 10, 14 years, you might go with 2 terabyte instead of 1 terabyte. But so let's just say you want to do that, then you're going to end up spending 25 new for RPM. Let's just go with the slow one. Or the fast one. I mean, it's pretty irrelevant. Okay, yeah, so the faster one, Western Digital Blue, hard drive, $46. So you want to be able to run a Bitcoin node for another 14 years or so, because it's 1 megabyte every single 10 minutes. You're going to end up spending $46.99. Right? And so, like, sure, you can cherry pick the largest chain in existence, I believe, which is the Ethereum blockchain, but to run a Bitcoin node, you can do it on a Raspberry Pi, I believe. 7 gigabytes of free disk space. That's it. God, that's so small. 2 gigabytes of RAM, broadband internet connection. You definitely don't want to have a metered connection. 6 hours a day that the node can be left running, right? So, it's really inexpensive to be able to set up a Bitcoin node. I believe that you can still do it on a Raspberry Pi, because a Raspberry Pi meets those requirements. You can get 2 gigabytes. You can actually get 4 gigabytes of RAM. You can attach a larger hard drive than 7 gigabytes, right? And I'll put this in the video description below as well. But running a node, Bitcoin, super easy. Running a node in other cryptocurrencies, depending on the cryptocurrency, can be more difficult. Solana, in order to be able to process this number of transactions per second, has to have fairly large nodes, so the nodes are quite expensive to set up. But I believe like Algorand, you can set up a node on a Raspberry Pi as well. So it's just fairly easy to do. Ethereum is the exception because it has one of the largest, I think it has the largest blockchain of any other one, in part because it's used so much, but also because of the amount of data that they have to store on the blockchain. They're working on technologies in order to make that easier by introducing sharding. But anyways, like you can, he's basically cherry picking the largest blockchain.
Systems is that they're extremely slow. Proof of work is inefficient by design, and proof of stake has multiple layers of lottery that need to be executed before any transaction can be conducted, and, in particular, suffers from delays when elected validators are offline and the system needs to draw again. As an extension of being slow, they're also prone to getting overwhelmed if too many people try to make transactions simultaneously, which can cause desyncs between validators and even lead to what's called a fork, where...
So, I don't know what he is referring to. Like, I don't know an example that he's referring to here, where a blockchain became overwhelmed and then had a hard fork because of it. I would like it if he actually provided an example of this. Hard forks do happen, but I've never heard of this sort of desync hard fork happening. So I would like to see the example that he can point to, an example that he can point to
simultaneously, which can cause desyncs between validators and even lead to what's called a fork, where two or more pools of validators reach a different consensus about the state of the network, and each branch keeps on going afterwards, assuming that it is the authoritative version. Forks can also be caused on purpose, and this is, in fact, the only way to effectively undo transactions. Like, if someone stole your coin...
Right, this is also the case. Yeah, you can't really undo transactions very easily at all with blockchains.
The only way to get them back would be to convince the people who manage the chain itself to negotiate a rollback. That's foreshadowing for later.
And I know the instance that he's referring to, this is going to be because of a hack within the DAO, the Maker DAO, I believe it was called. And it's what led to the split between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. Which is number 29. So you can see the difference between Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. Ethereum Classic being $47 per coin, and Ethereum being $3,460 or $3,460 and 46 cents. So what ended up happening was the Maker DAO, I believe it was called, was hacked, and the person that hacked it stole all of the funds, and the blockchain essentially came to the conclusion that they needed to roll back that transaction because they thought that it would be detrimental to the network in order to allow for this person to hack the Maker DAO in order to steal basically all of those funds. And there were people that were opposed to this, the people that wanted it. And so what ended up happening was there was a fork where Ethereum Classic maintained the blockchain as it was and continued on, with the hacker basically maintaining all of his funds, and the Ethereum, which rolled back the transaction in order to give people back the money that was stolen. I mean, there's varying degrees of like whether or not you can agree with this decision or not, but it's obvious based off of the market sentiment which one ended up winning out, which was the rollback. This is the only rollback that I'm aware of. It doesn't happen very often at all. In fact, that's the only one that I'm aware of. So if he has some other examples, I don't believe that he does, then that would be interesting to see. But for the most part, there are no rollbacks on the blockchain, right? So the funds that are in are the funds that are in, and whatever happens, happens.
Now, because the nature of a fork involves a disagreement on what transactions actually happened and who got paid for those transactions, this means that each arm of the fork has a vested...
Also, there are various different reasons why a blockchain might fork. One of the reasons, and the only one that I'm aware of, would be the Ethereum Classic split because of a disagreement on transactions. But Bitcoin has had... Really? There we go. A history of Bitcoin hard forks. God, I love this search feature. This is great. Bitcoin hard forks are where basically they take a copy of the Bitcoin transaction list. They make some sort of adjustment to the way in which the protocol operates, not rolling back transactions typically, but changing how the blockchain works, and then basically trying to see if people will also get on board with their change. The biggest one that I'm aware of, and this actually happened when I first started getting into cryptocurrency, was the split between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. Basically, Bitcoin Cash was saying that in order to process transactions faster and deal with the spam of the network, that the blockchain, the block size should be increased. So right now it's 1 megabyte every 10 minutes. And that 1 megabyte contains all of the data for all of the Bitcoin transactions that happen on chain. Here, I'll just read this off of Investopedia. In response to SegWit, some Bitcoin developers and users decided to initiate a hard fork in order to avoid the protocol updates it brought about. So this is in reference to SegWit. which is segregated witnesses, which allowed for more transactions to take place per block. Bitcoin Cash was a result of this hard fork. It split off from the main blockchain in August 2017 when Bitcoin Cash wallets rejected Bitcoin transactions and blocks. Bitcoin Cash remains the most successful hard fork of the primary cryptocurrency. As of June 2021, it is the 11th largest digital currency by market cap, owing in part to the backing of many prominent figures in the cryptocurrency community and many popular exchanges. Bitcoin Cash allows blocks of 8 megabytes and did not adopt the SegWit protocol. So that's what it was 8 megabytes. And there's other hard forks too. Bitcoin Gold wants people to be able to mine using GPUs. And so you can go through here, and I'll include the link in the description in order to look at various Bitcoin hard forks. But there are many more than are listed inside this article, and all of them have their own reason for existing. So rollback of transactions is not the primary reason why a hard fork might happen. It's in fact the reason for only one hard fork that I'm aware of. But let's continue.
Did interest in its own arm being the authoritative arm, so resolving forks can turn into irreconcilable schisms, which is funny as an outside observer viewing it as an inane internet drama, but is frankly unacceptable for anything posturing as a serious and legitimate currency. Like, it's important to stress that because of the nature of the chain, the way that the ID numbers of later blocks are dependent on the outcomes of previous blocks, these aren't just a few disputed transactions that need to be resolved between the buyer, the seller, and the payment processor. These are disagreements on the fundamental state of the entire economy that create an entire alternate reality.
Okay, so the way that he's talking about this makes it seem like the only reason why a hard fork might necessarily exist is because of rollback in transactions, but this is not the case. Bitcoin, as it stands, has basically, other than the improvements that have been made on it, it stands relatively unchanged from its inception. And so what this actually means is that you can take an original Bitcoin wallet and use it in the current network and connect with current Bitcoin addresses and the current Bitcoin technology. Now, what you can't do is use something like Bitcoin Cash, which is way less than 13th now. I think it's like 26th. Yeah. What you can't do is send Bitcoin Cash and pretend that it's Bitcoin, because this is $380 and Bitcoin is $46,323. So there might be these schisms, but they basically are in many ways just kind of like blips on the radar to things like Bitcoin. Now, at the time, at 2017, it was a huge deal. I remember being right in the middle of it, and being there kind of for the hard fork. I had a very, very small amount of cryptocurrency back then. But it was a huge deal. You had Roger Ver, and I believe that he was complaining, or he was claiming to be Satoshi Nakamoto, known as Bitcoin Jesus. He was one of the people to push for advocating the switch over to Bitcoin Cash. Wow, there's a whole entire Investopedia article on this, written in updated in 2021. So interesting. Yeah, but he was one of the people that was pushing for Bitcoin Cash. And Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin split was purely an ideological one. But I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, especially right now, for Bitcoin, because places that are going to accept Bitcoin can still accept Bitcoin. And if there's a major hard fork, then they would have both of the currencies. So when the blockchain split, your wallet address that had cryptocurrency, like let's just say you had Bitcoin in a wallet address at the time of the Bitcoin Cash split. If you create a Bitcoin Cash wallet and put your seed or your private key into the Bitcoin Cash wallet, then your Bitcoin Cash will be there and it'll be equal to the amount of Bitcoin that was there because the ledger was the same at that point. So when it split, everything behind that is still the same. So all the Bitcoin you have, you're going to have Bitcoin Cash, which means it's relatively inconsequential when there is a split for most people, because if Bitcoin wins out, then you have your Bitcoin. If Bitcoin Cash wins out, then you have your Bitcoin Cash. Now, where you might run into risk, and this is an active decision by people who are trying to trade, which is something that I wish I would have done way back when, but you can trade your Bitcoin Cash for Bitcoin if there's an exchange that has both protocols, which there were at the time. And so it's still, though, Bitcoin still has been a unstoppable force and has continued to operate pretty well, other than minor relative fee spikes that happened. But again, improvements are being made. Lightning Network exists now, which it came into being in 2017, so it was still in its infancy back then. So all the transactions were happening on chain. So it's relatively inconsequential, basically, that Bitcoin Cash exists. And so here we are today, despite it.
It's an ecosystem that absolutely demolishes consumer protections and makes the re-implementation of them extremely difficult. One of the big selling points...
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make the re-implementation of consumer protections extremely difficult. All you have to do is go through a third party if you want the banking experience. So if you want fraud protection, that kind of stuff, then go through your current bank. And it's like, or go through a banking institution. It's pretty simple, I think.
Points of all this technology is that it's particularly secure. Very difficult for anyone to hack it directly since there's so much redundancy. A lot of hay is made about the system's resiliency against man-in-the-middle attacks, which are your classic Hollywood hacker-type attacks. Someone sends a command from point A, and on the way to point B, it is intercepted and altered. Someone hacks into the bank and adds an arbitrary number of zeros onto their account balance. Evangelists will commonly claim that blockchain could revolutionize the global shipping industry and reduce fraud. It's a good claim to interrogate. First, the things that blockchain is capable of tracking are things that manufacturers and shippers are already tracking, or at least trying to track. So this is not so much revolution as it would be standardization.
Okay, so it frustrates me, and this is actually the reason why I ended up starting to look into blockchain technology in maritime shipping, an exploration of use cases in the U.S. maritime transportation sector, in order to see exactly what people in the field were saying about this topic. And 20%, let me pull that back up. Estimated 20% of operational budgets are due to poor information management. That's huge. That's a fifth. A fifth of costs are due to poor information management. A standardization of this that can cut out that 20% cost is huge. Huge. A fifth. Like, conceptualize that for a second. Shipping costs could be cut by a fifth by implementing blockchain technology. Like, that's crazy. Cost of moving these avocados reduced by 15%. So let's just take this IBM estimate, 15%. Still crazy. $38 billion per year. Crazy. Not so much a revolution as it would be a standardization. Part of what reduced shipping costs globally was the standardization of the shipping container. Shipping containers in China are exactly the same as shipping containers in the US, are exactly the same as shipping containers in Europe, which means that it's really easy to create boats and create harbors that are going to move those shipping containers around. It's really easy to make trucks that are going to move those shipping containers around. It makes things so much easier. It's revolutionary to have standardization. that's exactly what we could do here using blockchain technology. It doesn't have to be Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be Algorand. It doesn't have to be Cardano. But the technology utilized properly can significantly cut costs. And this is what's so frustrating about this whole entire video, is that he's just kind of like brushing this off as if it's not a big deal.
Even that is built on a predicate assumption that everyone picks the same chain. It's an extremely optimistic assumption. Many firms deliberately want their information centralized and obfuscated to protect against corporate espionage. The lack of a shared, standardized bucket to put all the information into is not because it's been heretofore impossible, but because it's been undesirable. Second, it assumes the existence of a theoretical
and I want to see a source for that. I want to know who is saying that they want to make this system as inefficient and as secret as possible in order to prevent corporate espionage. Like, is he pulling that out of his butt, or does he actually have a source for that? Because I don't see anything.
Mechanism that ensures the synchronization of the chain and reality above and beyond the current capacity of logistics software. Some means of preventing people from just lying to the blockchain and giving it the information it expects to be receiving. The blockchain equivalent of ripping off the shipping.
Yeah, so he brings up a decent point here, and the decent point is that people lie. The point, though, is that all of the information is available to the shipping regulatory authority. So the shipping regulatory authority has a standard, and that standard is going to be applied to theoretically, right? And that standard is going to be applied to all of the businesses that need to be in compliance, all of the ports that need to be in compliance. They then can look at this data and go, okay, we're able to track this shipment from here to here, and from the manufacturing plant to the distribution facility to the port, and now this ship should have this fuel from this distribution facility and this port. When we swab, or when we go in there and we check the fuel, it should be this. It should be whatever amount sulfur. It should be these products. And if it's not, they have the chain. The chain is available. Granted, other shipping software could exist or could be created, but if you don't have to reinvent the wheel, why reinvent the wheel? Blockchain technology exists. It's open. It's free. It's open source. You can create your own copy of the blockchain, get rid of the fees, utilize it entirely for what you want to utilize it for, and then set up the system and be standardized for way less expensive than it would be to create some sort of database system to be able to keep track of everything, when you can just use the free and open source software that's already available, right? This improves accountability, and he's just blowing this off as if it's nothing.
Label and slapping it on the new box. The bigger problem here is that in the pantheon of fraud, man-in-the-middle attacks are actually pretty rare. Global shipping needs to deal with it in certain capacities, but taken on the whole, the vast majority of fraud doesn't come from altering information as it passes between parties, rather from colluding parties entering bad information at the start. Con artists...
Yes, this is true, but because we use paper records, it's basically prohibitively expensive and complicated to be able to check those records. By using a distributed database, we can check those records more easily. It increases accountability. It reduces costs, right? Look at the article. Look at the report that I have posted. Use case number 2, shipment tracking, and read this. Like I haven't read through the whole entire thing, but I've skimmed it, and it's obvious that this technology would be useful.
Don't hack the Gibson to transfer your funds to their offshore account, they convince you to give them your password. Most fraud comes from people who technically have permission to be doing what they're doing. Rather than preventing these actual common types of fraud, cryptocurrency has made them absurdly easy, and the main reason why cryptocurrency needs to be so resistant to man-in-the-middle attacks is because the decentralized nature of the network otherwise makes them acutely vulnerable to those attacks.
So he does bring up a good point here, and that is that for the most part, when people are getting defrauded or hacked or anything else, it's not typically like I'm gaining access to your computer and then draining your funds from your bank account. It's a like, I'm Apple support and I'm here to help, and it looks like you're having an issue with your Apple account, so please provide for me your username and password. So then I can help you out with this. And also while we're at it, if you could just provide me payment in Apple gift cards and send some money through Western Union, then we would be able to pay for the support, right? That's the way that it's going to work. It's not going to be, I've gotten into his account, I bypassed his security, like that kind of thing. Which also, by the way, if anybody calls you and expects payment for Apple support, they're not legit. Just to be absolutely clear. But this is true, but this is also a human problem, right? It's a problem that comes from people. It's not a problem that comes from the technology. So if you want to use a centralized institution because you think that you're going to be defrauded in this way, you totally can. You can keep your cryptocurrency in a centralized institution with a username and password just the same way that you would be able to utilize a bank, right? Like this is the case. So he's attributing to cryptocurrency to like resolve a problem that it was never intended to resolve, right? Again, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution, right? That's its purpose.
Most fraud comes from people who technically have permission to be doing what they're doing. Rather than preventing these actual common types of fraud, cryptocurrency has made them absurdly easy, and the main reason why cryptocurrency needs to be so resistant to man-in-the-middle attacks is because the decentralized nature of the network otherwise makes them acutely vulnerable to those attacks. What this all kind of means is that blockchains are all pretty bad at doing most of the things they're trying to do, and a lot of the innovations in blockchains are attempts at solving problems that blockchains introduced.
You see, this is hyperbolic, and I think that this is completely wrong, as shown by what I've talked about previously, but it allows for basically instantaneous global transactions for fractions of a penny or a couple pennies, or 80 cents, which is faster and more robust than current systems involving credit cards.
The biggest issue that cryptocurrencies have suffered from is a lack of tangible things to actually use them on as currencies, rent, or food, or transit. This is for pretty simple reasons. One is that the transaction fees on popular chains are so prohibitive that it's pointless to use them on any transaction that isn't hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. No one is going to buy the Bitcoin bucket from their local KFC. Ethereum's main transaction fee, called gas, on a good day runs around $20 US per.
Okay, so also he's using the most prohibitively expensive blockchain in existence at this point in time in order to provide this example. Right? If we look at the estimated fees, where did that go? Is that all the way back here? Wow. Average transaction fee is 80 cents, and it will process in 1 hour versus 30 cents and 2.9% 2 business days. Or Lightning Network. I don't have that up anymore, but it was like fractions of a penny in order to send $50 versus the $1.75 that it would cost in order to do that same transaction with a credit card and slower, right? So he's bringing up all of this stuff in order to say basically that Bitcoin is slow and expensive, but it's not the case. If you actually look at it, it's not slow and it's not expensive
per transaction, but that's severely.
And he's cherry picking here. Oop, I just bumped my microphone. He's cherry picking here. He's cherry picking the most expensive blockchain in existence because it's able to do so much more than transact value, and that puts strain on the system. They're continuing to make improvements to this with roll-ups like Arbitrum and Loopring, which I would be able to go into detail on at some other point in time. But basically, they process a bunch of transactions together, which then lowers the fees. And it's why you can have transactions on Loopring, which actually I should probably bring that back up, because I think I got rid of the tab that had the app open. Trade, simple, Loopring for ETH, the fee was 0.0012 ETH, and that was 6 minutes ago. And that is, right, we're doing this doing this live. $4. So $4 to process that transaction. Not super cheap, but not super expensive, and you're not getting any hidden fees. You own all of your assets. So that's right now. That's before the technology gets better. $4 to process a swap. Executing a smart contract for $4 is really nice, I think. Really cheap.
Optimistic. As of December 2021, the daily average cost of gas hasn't gone below $50 US since August, with the 3-month daily average riding over $130. And that's just the daily average. The hourly price can and does swing by up to 2 orders of magnitude. The throughput of blockchains is so abysmal that transaction slots are auctioned off to the highest bidder. That's why these numbers are so extreme. It only takes...
Okay, so from what I understand, fees are not because the auction slots are abysmal, that the throughput is abysmal. Fees are in order to prevent people from overloading the network, and that's why they have the bidding process. So that if somebody tries to just spam transactions as much as they can, it's going to be so prohibitively expensive to do that they won't be able to just continue doing it. Whereas people that are just doing normal transactions on the network aren't going to have to pay very much. You know, if you pay 80 cents, it's a little bit low, but if you pay 80 cents hundreds of thousands of times in order to try and bog down the network, then one, you're going to be making miners a lot of money because they're going to get all of those fees. But two, it's just going to be so expensive that you don't need to, you can't do it. You can't do it for very long. So yeah, that's why the fees are there. It's not because the system is necessarily super inefficient. It's to prevent spamming the network.
It takes a few high rollers competing on a transaction to drive the hourly price of gas up over $1,000 US. The internal term for this is a gas war, because it's just that common. Bots, in particular, can drive gas prices well into the tens of thousands of dollars as they compete to capitalize on mistakes, such as someone listing something for sale well below its general market price. Also, it needs to be stressed, these gas wars aren't localized to just the thing that's being fought over. If Steam is getting hammered because Concerned Ape posted Stardew Valley 2 by surprise, that will probably stay pretty well contained. If Taylor Swift concert tickets go on sale and Live Nation gets crushed, you might never even know. What those don't do is cause the cost of placing an order on DriveThruRPG to spike by 8,000% for 3 hours. The second big reason is that value on the coins themselves is so volatile that unless you're willing to engage with the speculative nature of the coins, there's actually a huge risk in accepting them as payment for anything. Bitcoin in particular, owing to its glacial transaction times, suffers from problems where the value of the coin can change dramatically between the start and end of a transaction. This is...
Okay, so this is not necessarily true because Lightning Network, again, Lightning Network processes transactions nearly instantaneously. You can have those transactions then sent to an exchange nearly instantaneously. You then can trade that Bitcoin for dollars nearly instantaneously. Once the exchange has the funds, then you're able to make that transaction, right? So you can trade Bitcoin for dollars really fast if you just connect yourself up to the Lightning Network. That's it. That's all you need to do. If you don't want to have to do that, again, it can take a couple of hours, but that's still faster. That's still faster than accepting credit card, because it'll take 2 to 4 days. And let's look at Bitcoin, because he says Bitcoin specifically, right? Let's look at the 24-hour chart. So we have 45,000, we have 44,000, and we have 46,000 per Bitcoin. That is not a huge fluctuation in price. It's just a couple percentage. Like it's only up 1%. So it's up 1% or down 1%, basically. About ish. 1% from here to here. From here to here. Okay, so 45 to 46. It's up 1.4% in the last 24 hours. So if you were to have a 24-hour transaction it would just be 1% difference. That's not huge, especially considering that Lightspeed is talking about estimating that your fee is going to be 6.5%. 6.5% markup on all of your goods in order to account for the fee. So if you do a markup of about 1%, you're probably going to be fine. If you look at the 7-day chart, like it can go from 44 to 47, back to 44 to 46, but it tends to trend upwards over the long haul. But you can make these transactions nearly instantaneously, so it's fairly irrelevant that the price does fluctuate. But it honestly doesn't. It's a very volatile asset, but if you're just getting into it to get out of it, it's not that crazy. Like it fluctuates down, it fluctuates up, but still you're basically going to be even within 7 days. If it takes you 7 days to process the transaction, that's an increase of 5.2%. But even if it were going down 5.2%, that's less than the cost of the markup that you need to do for a credit card. Approximately, right? So that this whole entire thing is a little bit misleading. This whole entire thing that he's talking about.
Transaction times suffers from problems where the value of the coin can change dramatically between the start and end of a transaction. This is such a problem that it's led to the rise of an entire strata of middlemen in the ecosystem, so-called stablecoin exchanges.
Okay, so stablecoins do exist, right? And this is the one that he's talking about, Tether. And Tether is the largest stablecoin. And it's just basically, it operates in a lot of ways like a bank, but utilizes cryptocurrency in order to transact value. And if we pull up the Tether website, decline, why Tether? Launched in 2014, Tether tokens pioneered the stablecoin model and are the most widely traded. Tether tokens offer the stability and simplicity of fiat currencies coupled with the innovative nature of blockchain technology, representing a perfect combination of both worlds. So, blah, 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 blah. They just wanted to basically make a cryptocurrency that is stable in price. And also one of the reasons why Tether exists is because some exchanges are not able to use US dollars. A good example of this is actually Uniswap. Uniswap can't use US dollars because US dollars are not on the blockchain. So USDC, which is a United States dollar coin, is an example of a stable coin that is used in order to transact value from Ethereum into dollars. You can take USDC, you can put it into Coinbase. Coinbase will turn your USDC into US dollars for free, and then you could transfer those into your bank account in the legacy banking system, right? So it makes it pretty easy to transact value without actually having to use real dollars and all of the regulations that are involved there, which I think is probably one of the more common reasons why stablecoins have become a thing, because you have exchanges like Binance, which, let me pull up exchanges. Binance, which is the largest cryptocurrency exchange. The website's being slow. Hold on. Really? All right, the website is just deciding that it's not going to work. Well, that's a little bit disappointing. All right. Let's go to CoinMarketCap. There we go. Rankings exchanges. Binance, which has a volume of 10,000 million, 29 billion, and it uses ETH and USD Tether, USDT, because it can't use US dollars, right? If you look at the most common pairs, it's all just USDT or Ethan Bitcoin, etc. ADA USDT, Waves, exactly USDT. So they can't use US dollars because they're not able to comply, or they don't want to comply. I'm not sure which one it is, with the regulations that are required for using US dollars. But let's get dark theme. Light theme is painful. Oh wow, that's a lot of volume. That's a lot of volume. But you also have exchanges like Kraken, or you know what? I don't even have to go to Kraken exchange. I can just go to exchanges. Coinbase, which allows for US dollars, and US dollars are the basically most common exchange medium. Except for Solana for some reason. Probably because they need it for decentralized DeFi. But like you have Gala, which I don't necessarily know what Gala is, and it's not important. You don't need to know what Gala is. But they're trading USDT. Now, there has been some controversy surrounding USDT because they initially said that their cryptocurrency was backed up 1-to-1 to US dollars. Now it's backed up 1-to-1 to US dollars to dollar equivalents, but that's also the reason why things like DAI exist. Which I'll link this article inside the description, but from what I understand, basically DAI is a stable coin that is pegged to the value of the US dollar by basically taking cryptocurrency in as collateral in order to make sure that there is no need for any sort of verification through things like Tether, that Tether has the US dollars. DAI is it actually explains what a stablecoin is too. It is crypto collateralized, if I understand right. Yeah, DAI is crypto collateralized. So they have cryptocurrency backing their stablecoin. So I think it's mostly to get around regulations. But let's just
like Tether that exists to quickly transfer cryptocurrencies between each other and lock in values. The primary goal of crypto in general is to starve public services, so that's a no-go. The second.
Okay, so this is so frustrating. All right, I'm just
process that makes you accountable to the tax man, and the primary goal of crypto in general is.
The primary goal of crypto in general is to starve public services, so that's a no-go. Who says this? Who believes this? Who thinks that this is actually the case other than Folding? Because this is the first time that I've heard this. Primary goal of crypto in general is to starve public services. Like, who thinks that? Who believes that? Who wants that to be the case? I know that most people are upset with taxes, but that's just the way that it is. A lot of people don't like taxes. It's totally understandable. But who's the people that say the primary goal of crypto in general is to starve public services? Why is he making this claim? What leads him to believe that this is the claim that is true? Like, I don't get it. And this is what's most frustrating about this whole entire thing. This is a hyperbolic statement that is just coming out of nowhere. He's just making this up. Part of this video is so well researched because you have very, very complicated topics that are explained in a very easy to understand manner. An example being when he was talking about cryptocurrency mining. He was able to get the technical details of cryptocurrency mining down basically to a T and explained it in a simple manner. I think that he did a brilliant job with this. But this right here leads me to be very frustrated with this whole entire video and all of the things that he's talking about, because it's obvious that he doesn't have more than a surface level knowledge of everything that's going on here, but he's also exclaiming these sort of like truisms. The primary goal of crypto in general is to starve public services, when in reality, I don't know of a single person that believes this. I don't know of a single person that has said, my goal is to starve public services. Like, what? Who? When? Where? Like, I want to know. What person that's influential inside the cryptocurrency space? What event within the cryptocurrency space? What event in general? Like, what person says this? I don't know of people that are like, I want to starve public services. It's just absolutely ridiculous and asinine for him to make this like generalized statement as if it's true. Like, who, what, when, and where? That's what I want to know. All right, let's keep on going. Let's keep on going. I think that I'm going to finish up this section and then probably end the video here. And then I'll get into other parts.
To starve public services, so that's a no-go. The second is that there just aren't actually that many buyers, and there's not enough liquidity in the ecosystem to cash out big holdings.
Not enough liquidity to cash out big holdings? Okay. The 24-hour volume of Bitcoin is 33,000, tens, thousands, million, billion. $33 billion. $33 billion of Bitcoin transacted on exchanges within the last 24 hours. How big of a holding do you have to have that there's not enough liquidity? Like, what? All right, let's just keep going.
Tether, the largest stablecoin, used to advertise itself as being backed on a one-to-one basis back when it was called Realcoin, but that language has become far more nebulous over time as it's become obvious that it just isn't true. This is a very complicated situation, but the short version is that the people who own Tether also own a real money exchange called Bitfinex, and there's evidence that the two services, both which require having actual dollars on hand in order to back their products and facilitate exchanges, are sharing the same pool of money, swapping it back and forth as needed. This means that at any given time, either service is potentially backed by $0, or at least that's what the data implies might be the case. Point is that if you're a high...
So it's possible, right? And that's actually one of the things that I think that cryptocurrency, even though it's not necessarily designed to solve this problem, actually solves this problem. Because when you're dealing with things like Bitcoin, the ledger is public. So you can see exactly how much Bitcoin an institution has. With Tether, they're taking US dollars and saying that it's backed by US dollars or dollar equivalents. If you go to the Tether website, which do I already have it open? God, this is so many tabs. No, I don't have it open. But there is actually an article that I had pulled up related to the whole entire controversy. But so here's the Tether website. If you go to transparency, so pegged 1-to-1 with matching fiat currency and backed 100% by Tether's reserves, right? And the reserves are 5.54% other investments, 4.99% secured loans, 5.22% corporate bonds, 82.25% cash and cash equivalents and other short-term deposits and commercial paper. And then this is broken up into treasury bills, 0% reverse repo notes, so none of those, I guess, cash, 12% cash, 1.27% money markets, and 52.51% commercial paper. Now, you have to take what they're saying here basically at face value. If you want to believe what they're saying, they don't have any audits, I don't believe. They only have assurance reports in which they state basically what they have in reserve. If you don't want to believe what they're saying, then don't use Tether. Like, you don't have to. There's other alternatives that you can use, such as DAI, which should work with basically every single exchange, like decentralized exchange, because it's an Ethereum token. But Like, if you don't believe them, then don't use Tether, right? But also cryptocurrency, if it's done correctly, like one Bitcoin is always worth one Bitcoin, and one Ethereum is always worth one Ethereum. You can verify that the Ethereum is legit based off of the blockchain. The blockchain validates the Ethereum, right? But this, you have to take them at their word if you want to use their currency. Some people don't. I personally wouldn't hold a large amount of Tether because I don't necessarily trust what they're going to say. But that's the point. That's part of the point of cryptocurrency. And they were getting investigated by the New York Attorney General and ended up paying a fine, but did not admit any wrongdoing. Yeah, they paid a fine, but did not admit any wrongdoing. So, I mean, you can take it for what it is or don't use it, but that's the way it is.
Roller with hundreds of millions of conceptual dollars tied up in cryptocurrency, there's a fundamental cash problem. Your holdings have inflated to tens, hundreds, or thousands of times what you put in, but that price is just theoretical. It's speculative. You have all this crypto, you can't meaningfully spend it, and there's not enough buyers for you to get it out. In order for you to cash out, you need to convince someone else to buy in. These factors, taken holistically, mean that...
Okay, and this whole graphic is a little bit silly. Like, they didn't spend all of their money on Matt Damon calls. And also a lot of the, a lot of these exchanges exist in order to facilitate exchanges between people, right? So you have local Bitcoins, which is a way to facilitate exchanges with people who are near you. Typically, right? You can go and meet somebody in person and make a trade for dollars and Bitcoin. Local Bitcoins acts as the intermediary to make sure that the transaction goes through. You can do so in a decentralized manner on the internet by using something like BISC, which basically follows the same process, except it's over the internet. And then you have other exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken and Binance, that kind of stuff that facilitate exchanges between people. But like, you could say the same thing about gold. Gold only has value because people are willing to put money towards buying other gold, right? Like, there is a certain amount of intrinsic value to gold because of the mechanical properties that it possesses, right? It's very good for conducting electricity, and so sometimes is used in electronics, that kind of stuff. But most of the gold demand is because it's pretty and it's able to be used in jewelry and stuff, and also because people find it valuable. So they buy gold in order to facilitate defense against like hyperinflation, market crashes, that kind of stuff. And we see that every single time the price of gold basically goes up is whenever there's market instability or uncertainty, and it goes down, basically the opposite. But maybe not most people, some people argue that gold basically just maintains its value. Gold doesn't necessarily really go up too much in value. Gold doesn't necessarily really go down too much in value. It's very stable, which is one of the reasons why people like it. But as far as money goes, like, in order to use it to buy goods and services, that kind of stuff, you can't buy anything functionally with gold. Like, nobody accepts gold as a payment. Basically, I don't think anybody accepts gold as a payment. Less places accept gold as payment than Bitcoin. And then you also have like, to hold it is cumbersome because it's a big, heavy metal, or you have to pay somebody to hold on to it for you. Requires somebody else to like hold on to it and keep track of it and keep it safe, right? And you can use banks and stuff for that. There are services that you can use in order to keep your gold in some sort of like a reserve, or you can buy paper gold, which is like a gold share, a share in an organization that has gold. You purchase basically part of the organization, and then when gold value goes up or down, they hold a bunch of gold, they keep track of it, they keep all of the stuff in place like so that, you hold like a part of the company. So therefore it goes up when gold goes up, it goes down when gold goes down, that sort of thing, without actually owning any of the physical asset. But like in a manner of speaking, basically, in a lot of ways, it is the same thing. And he talks about the greater fool theory. So the greater fool theory, again, article is going to be listed in the video description. God, there's going to be so many links in this description. I'm probably running the RAM up on my computer trying to keep all of these tabs open. But greater fool theory argues the price goes up because people are able to sell overpriced securities to a greater fool. Whether or not they are overvalued, that is, of course, whether or not they are overvalued. That is, of course, until there's no greater fools left. So then those people would be the bag holders, right? And this article actually talks about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price is often cited as an example of the greater fool theory. The cryptocurrency doesn't appear to have intrinsic value, which I actually disagree with this statement. I think that Bitcoin does have intrinsic value, the same way that PayPal has value, the same way that Visa has value, the same way that Western Union has value. Bitcoin does have value. Okay, so although this is an area of debate, it consumes a massive amount of electricity, consists simply of lines of code stored in a computer network. Yeah. Like, this is so reductionist. Like, sure, it's just simply lines of code stored in a computer network. So is Facebook. Facebook is just lines of code stored in a computer network. Despite these concerns, the price of Bitcoin has skyrocketed over the years. At the end of 2017, it touched a peak of $20,000 before retreating, attracted to the lure of profiting from its price appreciation. Traders and investors rapidly bought and sold the cryptocurrency, with many market observers positing that they were buying simply because they hoped to resell at a higher price to someone else later. The greater fool theory helped the price of Bitcoin zoom upwards in a short period of time as demand outstripped supply of the cryptocurrency. The years 20 to 2021 saw Bitcoin rise to new heights, topping $60,000 and hovering above $50,000 for weeks. This time, however, large institutional investors and corporations such as Tesla and PayPal have been involved in the buying, and it is debatable whether or not they can be considered fools. So perhaps Bitcoin is not an example of the greater fool theory after all. So I think that this is a relatively balanced examination of whether or not Bitcoin is an example of the greater fool theory, but I personally don't think that it is. I think that it does have intrinsic value by being able to be a medium of exchange that can be done globally, nearly instantaneously, and for cheaper than existing networks, existing financial frameworks. Right. And I've shown that previously a couple of times. So
cash out.
I don't think that this is an example of greater fool theory at all.
You need to convince someone else to buy in. These factors, taken holistically, mean that cryptocurrency is a bigger fool scam. There's a lot of digital ink spilt trying to outline if it's a decentralized Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme or some hybrid of the two, which is a taxonomical argument that I'm not here to settle. But like both of those, it's a bigger fool scam.
Okay, so I don't think that it's any sort of Ponzi scheme or anything like that, in part because you don't have to, with Bitcoin, for example, I'm just gonna use Bitcoin because it's the cryptocurrency that I'm most familiar with. You don't have to bring new people in order to make more money. Like pyramid schemes basically exist because if you bring people into the fold of the thing, like you give me $50 to become a part of this program, and then if you bring in 3 of your friends and they give you $50, then you can, keep 50 of or 100 of those dollars, and then you give $50 to me, and then those people can start bringing people in. That's a clear example of a Ponzi scheme, because you're having to basically give somebody money in order to bring this thing up. And they've gotten a little bit more intelligent about the way that they do things. For example, I think that multi-level marketing is an example of a pyramid scheme in a lot of ways because of the way that it's structured. And there's a lot of jokes surrounding this as to whether or not like multi-level marketing is a Ponzi scheme. But that's a debate for another time. I think that the primary differences that you're going to be seeing here is that Bitcoin does have utility. And so you can't really say that it's a greater fool thing because it's better money than gold. And what is gold's current market cap? So the estimated global market cap of gold is $12.328 trillion. And then if we look at cryptocurrency, it's just $2 trillion. Or Bitcoin, it's just $878 million, right? So I would say that I would argue that Bitcoin in a lot of respects should be considered as valuable, if not more valuable than gold due to its nature. And so like the argument here is that the inherent value of Bitcoin is actually more, or the underlying value of Bitcoin is actually more than the current price, not the other way around.
The whole thing operates by buying worthless assets, believing that you will later be able to sell them to a bigger fool. The entire structure of cryptocurrencies at their basic level of operation is designed to deliver the greatest rewards to the earliest adopters, regardless of if you're talking about proof of work or proof of stake. This is inherent to their being.
It's not inherent to their being. If the price of Bitcoin were to go down, then the people that ended up getting into it and didn't sell then would be negatively impacted. And this could be the case of basically any stock or any other investment. If the price of gold drops, then lo and behold, the gold that you hold is going to be worth less. Hey, lo and behold, the gold that you hold. The gold that you hold is going to be worth less. If PayPal suddenly has a massive security flaw that they discover, the price of the stock is going to drop fairly significantly. The people that invested in PayPal are going to be kind of screwed. If you look at, and this is the same with Bitcoin. If some sort of fundamental flaw with Bitcoin is discovered, the price of Bitcoin is going to drop because people don't want it. But people do want it in part at this point in time due to it being a speculative asset, but later on it's going to be able to provide the ability for people to have financial services that aren't able to access them. And other cryptocurrencies will give financial tools and interest rates that are better than current systems. And I already talked about this earlier, and all of the links are going to be inside the description. So all right, let's continue.
As Stephen Deal put it, these schemes around crypto tokens cannot create or destroy actual dollars. They can only shift them around. If you sell your crypto and make a profit in dollars, it's only because someone else bought it at a higher price than you did. And then they expect to do the same, and so on ad infinitum. Every dollar that comes out of cryptocurrency needs to come from a later investor putting a dollar in. Crypto investments cannot be anything but a zero-sum game, and many are actually massively negative sum. In order to presume a crypto investment functions as a store of value, we must simultaneously need to suppose an infinite chain of greater fools who keep buying these assets at any irrational price and into the future forever.
Okay, so this exact same thing could be said about gold. Because gold, right, if you replace Bitcoin with gold, the schemes around gold cannot create or destroy actual dollars. They can only shift them around. If you sell your gold and make a profit in dollars, it's only because someone else bought it at a higher price than you did. And then they expect to do the same, so on, ad infinitum. Every dollar that comes out of gold needs to come from a later investor putting a dollar in. Gold investments cannot be anything but a zero-sum game, and many are actually massively negative sum. Okay, that doesn't exactly work language-wise, but I'm going to continue on. In order to presume a gold investment functions as a store of value, we simultaneously need to suppose an infinite chain of greater fools who keep buying gold at any irrational price and into the future forever, right? You could just replace crypto assets with gold and it applies basically exactly the same. The primary difference here is that gold has a long history of being a store of value. Cryptocurrency is brand new, but cryptocurrency is better money than gold. It's more easily divisible, it's more easily carried, and also it is cheaper to use. Like, and I don't think that that's necessarily up too much for debate. So, like, it's a better money than gold. Right? So, like, you could apply this to basically anything. And also, like I was talking about earlier with the greater fools, oh wow, I actually found the spot. This operating under the assumption that cryptocurrencies don't have intrinsic value when they do. When you can do things like keep track of maritime shipping more easily and more effectively in a standardized manner, and also like utilize it more easily than accepting credit cards at a garage sale. Like, it's so much easier to use Bitcoin instead of a credit card. And then also on top of that, all the fees that you would have to pay, Square charges a 2.6% plus 10-cent fee for every transaction using swiped cards, and 3.5% plus a 15-cent fee for manually keyed payments. Venmo to pay with a credit card, you'll incur a 3% fee. Zelle just does account-to-account transfers, etc. So if you wanted to use a credit card, you're going to end up with paying about a 3% or 3.5% fee, or 2.6% plus 10-cent fee, right? If you're using cryptocurrencies in order to accept payments from a garage sale, if the other person has the cryptocurrency, which at this point in time is I would say the primary issue with it, then it can be super cheap and super fast to just use the Lightning Network. Let's just say you spend $50. It's like 30 something cents, I think, you can roll back the video to where earlier I calculated out the exact cost. But it's just silly how cheap it is compared to these other options and how much faster. So it's operating under the presupposition that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, when I think that it does. Let's just look at intrinsic value. All right. Intrinsic value is an umbrella term with useful meanings in several areas. Most often, the term implies the work of a financial analyst who attempts to estimate an intrinsic value through the use of fundamentals and technical analysis. No universal standard, net worth based off of financial models. All right, so I don't know enough about all of this. Okay, so pros. Intrinsic value helps determine the value of an asset, an investment, or a company. Intrinsic value provides the amount of profit that exists in an options contract. Cons is calculating the intrinsic value of a company is subjective, since it estimates risk and future cash flows. The intrinsic value of an option is incomplete, since it doesn't include the premium paid and time value. Well, anyways, I'll include this in the link as well, so you can read up more on it. But I think that the fact that you can use Bitcoin more cheaply and faster than credit cards means that there's a lot of potential there for growth and for use for a lot of businesses as people start to get more of it and more services allow it to more easily be purchased, such as Square. Then you'll see more adoption of it.
All right, with all that out of the way, let's talk about the ape in the room.
Okay, so that's going to be the end of this part of this critique. All of those links are going to be in the description of the video. I think that this is a fairly well researched response to the first part of that video. Of course, my arguments are not perfect, and I don't expect them to be. I hope that there is some sort of relatively healthy debate that stems from this video. I hope that it reaches enough people that there is some sort of a relatively healthy debate from this. But if you have any critiques of my video, I at least hope that the primary critique is not you didn't do any research on this or you don't know what you're talking about. More so that it's like a difference in opinions. Like, for example, Bitcoin has intrinsic value, right? This is something you might disagree with. And I hope that I'm able to have a healthy debate with people about whether or not Bitcoin is intrinsically valuable. I'm also going to be including all of the links. And I think that a lot of the sources that I'm using are pretty trustworthy. Smart Asset, NASDAQ, Investopedia, as well as going directly to a lot of companies and their websites and seeing directly what they say about certain things, rather than being hyperbolic. So I hope that you made it this far into the video, and I hope that you have a nice day and that we are able to have a nice discussion following this. I'm going to be trying to release more cryptocurrency related content eventually, and I hope that a lot of the misconceptions about cryptocurrency and a lot of the false information and hyperbolic information that is getting thrown around regarding cryptocurrency and this sort of very, very large video are ending up getting dispelled eventually. I hope that enough people are able to take this kind of thing seriously in order to have like a good discussion surrounding this, because I think that cryptocurrency is a revolutionary technology in the same way that like the internet is a revolutionary technology and the internal combustion engine is a revolutionary technology. Heavier than air flight is a revolutionary technology, and all of these things had their hiccups. They had naysayers, they had people that were saying that it would never work, and there's no application, it's not practical, all of these things, when in reality I think that it's just going to get better, and I think more people are going to have access to these sorts of things. But like that's the debate that we should be having, and I think that clearing up inaccuracies is a good way of doing that. So I hope that you have a wonderful day. I hope to hear you in the comments. Please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more content, and tell me in the comments if you think I did a good job, if you think I did a bad job, and why. Because I'd be very curious to hear. This is my first like video that I've created, and also a very long video, so I am curious to hear what you might have to say surrounding this whole entire topic if you did make it until the end. So thank you, everybody. I hope that y'all have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace. Thank you.